Good evening. This is the April 21st meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The time is 6 o'clock sharp. Our first order of business is to recess into work session. We'll review the cases tonight. After that, we'll reconvene at 6:30 to have the formal public hearings on those items scheduled on the agenda. So it is right around 6:01, and with that, I'll adjourn to work session.
Gardeners at the Discovery Garden because they like labor when they're opening up.
All righty, guys.
So Eddie has started the meeting.
Ready to do it?
Let's do it.
All right, I guess what we'll do is first order of business will be to call the roll. I am the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Edmund Haas. I am here to do the roll call. Vice Chairman Portman.
Present.
Vice Commission Member Sue Blankenship.
Present.
Cindy Bishop.
Present.
Ed Marr.
Present.
Freddie Guerra.
Coming.
Jim Walker. Okay, they're not here just yet. Okay, so we'll review items 3 and 4 on the agenda. Those will be intertwined as the review of the cases for this evening. So, Mary, you have the floor.
Do you want to do the questions first, or?
No, I'll wait.
Okay.
Well, actually, yeah, you're thinking because
Yeah.
this is the least interesting of the case.
Well, just to kind of get it out
They're
there.
all interesting.
Yeah, well, so the sign ordinance, what I'm proposing to do for that is, we've been continuing it. We've got another big item to include in that amendment. So what I want to do is just withdraw that case from consideration tonight and bring it forward for next month. And so I included all the updates to the staff report, and I was prepared to give a presentation tonight, but I think Mary's got plenty on her plate tonight, and we'll have a long meeting anyway. So,
what are the other adds onto the sign?
So there is it's a couple of billboards that are taking the place of some that have been removed. So we've removed a lot more than what we're replacing with. So it's a plus, but we've got to add it to the zoning ordinance in order to make that a reality. So the other thing I had here was
I didn't get anyone.
okay.
I did the same thing.
So this is really important. The Patrick Lencioni is considered an organizational performance expert, right? And he's written several leadership books about the organizational culture. One of the things he teaches is that in order to create a healthy organization, or in this case a board or commission, we need to create clarity to make sure everyone is on the same page and we're all aligned over these 6 critical questions. So I'm going to pass these out, and this is going to be...
You also need to feed them, right?
Right, absolutely. So I'm giving you some homework to come and be prepared to discuss this next month. Come with answers to these questions from your perspective from being a planning and zoning commissioner. Now, these questions right here are from staff's perspective as being part of the organization here, right? So how do we exist? How do we make a difference in the world? Why is it worth doing this? How do we behave? Give us 2 or 3 behavioral values that are invaluable within the commission. What are a small handful of things that we won't appoint someone to the commission if they don't have those sort of behaviors, and these are types of things that will never make a decision that violates these values. And then the third question is, what do? We have to know what business we're in. Are we facilitators? Are we gonna be a regulator in certain instances? And then how will we succeed? This is our strategy. How would we make intentional decisions that will differentiate us from other cities and ensure that we have the best possible chance to succeed? And then what is most important right now to this group, and then who must do what in order to succeed. So I'll give you more information, but there's Patrick Lencioni. He has a website, or he has a YouTube video that he goes through these 6 questions. And so if you just look it up, it's maybe 3 or 4 minutes long, and it'll kind of get you focused. And I want you to come prepared to discuss this so that we can collaborate and make sure we're all on the same page with the answers to each of these questions.
So we can't copy your answers?
No, yeah, absolutely not. Unless they're
Watching the video.
So is this in relation to planning and zoning or the city of Coppell?
the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that's your group that you're acting like it's an organization,
Okay.
right?
So
So
what's
this-
spurring this?
Okay,
Is this,
so the city manager's office, they had our organization answer these 6 questions. It's very important, and he wants to make sure all the boards and commission members are on the same page, so that when we elect or appoint new board members, that they come on board with the same sort of vision in mind, and we're all working towards the same goal.
So would ultimately potentially become criteria for, as you review the applicants, okay, in, out, we'll shortlist, then you go through the interview process?
These are things that we'll probably have to teach someone that's appointed to the commission. But, definitely it'll give us a basis or a baseline for them to have the knowledge, right?
Cool, sounds fun.
Yeah. That
I've
concludes
never
my
had
remarks.
homework before from here.
Yeah,
There's some for everything.
Then there's a book to read before you answer the question.
well, so this is based on The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni, if you wanted to read that book or, listen to the audio book summary, whatnot. Thank you. That concludes my remarks.
Okay.
Mr. Mary Shelley.
So item number 7, which is the first public hearing on tonight's agenda, is for the Stratford Manor subdivision, which is located just north of DeForest and backs up to Dent Creek. So back about 2 years ago, they started having a hog problem. And so the hogs would come in, go onto the street, and a couple of the houses out front adjacent to the HOA lot basically had their yards just torn up. So the hogs have resurfaced. They came back like in October, and on 3 separate occasions in October tore up the yard again. So we did meet with like a trapper to talk about, hey, what are our options? Because animal control, we can't do anything for them.
Pig Fest.
Yeah. So, they have nice lawns and just perfect for what those feral hogs are looking for in terms of to eat, like all the grubs and stuff in the lawns. So this is a problem. Yes.
I'm just curious, why can't animal control step in? It's an animal, right?
Health, safety, welfare issue.
Yeah, it's not something that our animal control people can go out and track the hogs.
Why not?
There's a lot more.
They're huge, first of all.
They're
Oh, well, on a couple of properties, we have hog traps.
yeah.
And they're the ones that, they come in and then they just
Oh,
slowly lower and they're trapped.
Cool.
And then what?
Then they relocate them.
It's open to the public.
To heaven?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Well, if you,
What it is.
We're in the
hogs are
general
smart, if you kill a hog right
precinct,
there,
I'll
they'll,
take that.
We
they
can't,
won't come back.
we can't.
Where's
interact
Commissioner
with
Walker and
the
his
public,
hunting
so
rod
This is
when
our
we need
work
it?
session.
I know, I'm in a work session, I just want to go.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you. Is it the front
Okay,
lock?
thank you.
The front door's locked? This is the one that should be open.
Well, got it. Anyway, thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
Appreciate the clarification.
So they did meet with a trapper. the trapper, basically told them kind of the process they could trap them. It wouldn't necessarily get rid of the problem. So they opted to put up a fence. So they put up a fence.
If you slaughter one in the front yard, they won't come back either.
If you do what?
If you slaughter one in the front yard.
Yeah, pigs can have an unusual sense of smell,
Uh-huh.
that if you kill one, they won't come back to that spot.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of scary that you know that.
I told you we can trap hogs.
So,
Learn a lot
just
about them
a
when they're on
little
your property.
brief history on the hog issue. From 82 to 2016, the number of hogs in the U.S. has increased exponentially. So from 2.4 up to about 6.9 million. In Texas alone, we have probably about 2.6 million hogs. And if you look at the map, basically every county in Texas, other than I think one in El Paso, is dealing with hogs. So the hog fence they put on the HOA lot, it's about 339 feet in length. The two houses that abut the HOA lot, so it ties into their back fences or their side yard fences. So these hog wire fences are 16-foot panels, 52 inches in height. The lower part of the panels are really skinny type panels because the baby hogs otherwise will sneak through.
Mm-hmm.
And the hogs, they can start having babies as young as 6 months of age. And they can have about 2 litters a year with like 4 to 6 little piggies each time. So essentially that whole street signed a petition and asking for to be able to leave that hog wire fence in place instead of some kind of decorative metal fence. We did talk with our engineering people in terms of, are they okay with this? Will this interfere with anything over there? And they were fine with it. The floodplain is, like I said, about 80 something feet north of there. We do have some PD conditions, to put in a gate in case we have to go do any type of work on that HOA lot or any easements that we have. That they maintain the fence if something happens and keep it free of debris. So that's the first one.
You said that was October when the fence was put in?
Yes.
Okay, so I read the supporting documentation
Well,
about,
they had the thing in October, the 3 incidents. So
Okay.
they put it up after that.
oh, just after that? Okay.
Yeah. Because of that.
I was
So
asking.
sorry to be late.
Oh, that's right. So for the
We
record,
did.
both Freddie and
We did,
Kim
it's
are
gone.
now present.
Yeah.
So the question I had was,
Got enough hot
is there
dogs.
anything are there like daily migratory patterns of the hogs? Like this fence won't cause them to go down to the next street and start tearing things up there, and then there's a fence down there, and then a fence further down.
I'm not a hog expert by any means.
Let me redirect to Sue, because you're the
They
local expert.
they follow the creeks and rivers,
Yeah.
that's what they do.
Because that's where they typically get their food. And I think it's more prevalent in the colder months.
That I don't know anything about.
Just didn't want, because of this fence, an issue popping up next door, and then it creates another thing, and then how do we deal with that? Well, since it's a case-by-case consideration, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the more
yeah,
activity, the further they'll move on.
So I don't know if any of you had a chance to go out there. I did go out there. It's far enough back where unless you're actually looking for it, you would never really see it.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Particularly when all the foliage starts filling in like it is now.
Exactly.
And they can't discharge a firearm in the city limits. So you can't get rid of them that way.
Yeah, you'd have to trap them and then,
You can if you have over 15 acres.
Yeah, but still.
Saying in city limits you can.
We can change that.
That's a state
Well,
law.
there is a state law that allows you to hunt without a license for vermin and feral pigs are on the list.
Mhm.
You can air, you can shoot them from a helicopter,
Mhm.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, if you read that publication from Texas Wildlife, that is, you know, in other counties, they have, you know, competitions, essentially, like who can catch the biggest hogs and stuff like that. So I know people that have caught them that are, you know, 400 pounds, 500 pounds, even larger. So they grow pretty quickly. They eat a lot every day, about 3 to 5% of their body mass. So it's a growing problem.
They procreate like crazy.
Yeah, almost like rabbits.
Yeah, I've never gotten a 400 pounder, but we can dream.
Yeah. But they have other areas where it's sport, right? Like, and they have them where they do it from helicopters. They'll fly and be, yeah, shooting them by helicopter.
They will destroy a deer lease in no time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
they're a big problem.
Or a vegetable garden or yards.
Pictures
The
in the
front, oh my gosh.
in the report are just nuts.
Yeah. No, they're a real menace. You know, the city had already hired that one trapper to come in. I think that was south of my place in that Grapevine Springs Park and that area. And they did it really smartly, but you have to have a place where you can set traps and do all that.
right, they have to be able to back their trailers in and do all that. So I think in this instance, it wasn't feasible.
Yeah, I drove up there just to check it out. I didn't think so either.
Yeah.
I mean, the fence looked to me to just keep them down in the creek bed.
Right.
So it's not gonna divert them into another neighborhood or
Yeah.
anything
So
like
they
that.
have, you know, the feedback that we got from the neighbors was that, you know, they don't want the pigs coming in on the street because they have kids that play out there and everything else, so.
Was that the only concern? That was,
Well, from the neighbors on Stratford, they were all in favor of allowing for that fence. We did get one from the neighboring Cambridge Manor that they weren't necessarily in favor of it just because it wasn't a decorative metal, and, you know, would it cause other neighborhoods to ask for the same thing? So.
Okay.
I believe they might be here tonight, so we'll hear from them. Item 8, are you guys good with the hog fence?
We look forward to your presentation.
yes.
So,
I
item 8.
should've gotten a bacon pizza.
Missed
Missed opportunity.
So, item 8 is public hearing regarding carports. So, essentially, why we're here tonight is carports are allowed in the city, but there's certain requirements to have a carport. Typically, it's the, you know, in the rear yard with a 20-foot rear yard setback. We had someone who came in to apply for a carport permit. They were denied because they didn't meet the minimum requirements. They did not like that answer. So they went and basically went around and drove around and tried to find, you know, who else has a carport, how can they have
And
a
tattled on their
carport?
neighbors.
You know, sheds, garbage cans, everything. So, one of the areas was Sherwood Park. This was a subdivision that was platted back in the 1980s. They are duplexes, and they do have a one-car garage. So now any subdivision or residential subdivision that is built is required to have a minimum 2-car garage with 2-car parks, concrete behind it. So Sherwood Park has 1-car garages and like a 2-car pad behind that. There's about 30 out of the 264 lots that have a carport. I believe all of them, none of them except for one, I think had a permit for them. So how long have those carports been there? I couldn't tell you exactly, but considering they were done in the mid-80s, so I think the majority of them are over 20, 30 years old. So all but 2 of them are interior to the subdivision. So these are all rear entry homes, so they have alleys. There's the only 2 that you could probably really see is if you drive down Moore Street, because they back up to Moore and there's no wall or shrubs or anything to kind of hide it. So we started to send out letters to everyone with these carports. We had a lot of angry people. So this particular subdivision came and met with staff to say, hey, what can we do since we have 30 of them in our subdivision and we only have 1-car garages. So we did meet with them and say, you could come forth and ask for some kind of waiver or different kind of conditions for carports in your particular subdivision. In order to do that, they went and got a signed petition from more than 50% of their neighborhood, so about 134 property owners, to say, hey, we are in favor of doing something to maintain the carports, or what can we do to keep carports and potentially allow additional carports. So a lot of what they're coming to us for was because the carports have been there for a long time. There's a lot of elderly people who live in that subdivision, and they want the benefits of a carport, whether that be for protection from the weather, handicap accessibility, and as well as keeping cars off the street where they can park in the back versus out on the street out front. So we did look at, this was done as a PD, like I said, platted in the 80s, became a PD in about 95. Another subdivision with townhouse zoning, the Woodridge neighborhood, was similar in characteristic to this in terms of they had no garages at all that were required when they were constructed. And they did get a change in their PD to allow for carports with less than the 20-foot requirement. I think theirs is at 3 feet. And even then, there's some other houses within that subdivision that were at 0. So why they did it back in 95-ish or way earlier than this subdivision, I can't tell you. I can only tell you that this is where we're at today, and this is what we're coming forward with. So they are asking for an amendment to the PD conditions to allow for reduced setback requirements, both for the existing and any future proposed carports. So this is the first step in the process. If the zoning is approved, then they would still have to apply for a permit and have a structural engineer evaluate the compliance of the existing carport to make sure that is it going to fall, is it constructed adequately. So that does not guarantee that the carports that are in existence will be able to continue to be there. Not all of them, I'm sure, the majority probably, but there's probably a few that would definitely need some adjustments to them to be able to stay.
So if this thing were to go south tonight, what's the follow-on process?
So if you were to deny the request, they could appeal it and still go forward to city council. So the difference being, if you recommend approval, then they go forward with a simple majority to city council to approve it. If you deny it, they can appeal it, and then they have to get a super majority. Did I say simple before?
Simple, and then you got it right.
No, you got it right.
You got it right.
And
You always get it right, Mary.
and then at the council level, if it went south, what happens then?
That's it.
Code compliance.
Code
Yeah.
compliance.
Yeah.
Carport's gotta
Yeah.
go away.
But,
We would give them adequate time to remove it.
so what is adequate time?
We come up with a schedule, you know.
A year?
Yeah,
2
I can't
years?
tell you. We'd have to work with our code enforcement. It wouldn't be that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably be 30, 60 days.
So I'm some retired guy living on fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the carport there since I bought the place. The person that I bought it from had the carport there since they bought the place. It's the same carport's been there the whole time. One of my neighbors I don't even know gets denied on a new carport, drives
It
around,
wasn't in
looks
the
at mine.
subdivision, yeah.
And now I'm confronted with either paying for a structural engineer to come in and evaluate the viability of my carport at some cost to me,
And pay
or
for
I've got to
permit.
pay to have it demolished. What about that good old concept called grandfathering? Do we have that? Is that something that exists legally, Bob?
Yeah.
I mean, why aren't these grandfathered in?
Well, that's because the ordinance, when these were built, didn't allow them. And so they don't have grandfather.
It still had the 20-foot
You
setback.
can't violate the zoning ordinance and just, if I don't get caught in 10 years, it's not like a
Right.
Or 30.
adverse possession.
It was just an oversight
It
that
has
they,
to, people, one, we didn't find that many people
They didn't
had
get a permit.
permits, they built them without a permit.
yeah,
And code enforcement either didn't catch them or they didn't go back there to catch them.
okay.
And so most of these, we found out, have been ratted out by their neighbors, because not only for this, but for something else, you know, you left your garbage can out in the alley, and, oh yeah, would you see the carport across the street? So, and we, you know, our community is self-policed really well, and we don't have a lot of problems with these kind of things, and so they just went unreported. One of the things that, if you do want to consider doing this, I would ask that you look at a condition that the roof line not exceed the roof line of the primary structure to which it's attached to, so it doesn't create that looming backyard problem, either a flat roof or, and then two, is not allow outside storage. You can have your car there, keep your garbage cans there, but unfortunately, in a lot of other places I represent, carports then become outside storage facilities.
I was gonna ask that.
That's really
Yes.
junky, and it creates a lot of vermin issues and some other things.
Yeah.
Feral cats living in someone's couch. They haven't-
Right, we talked through that, Bob. You know, so our code enforcement would take care of
But
that.
could that be a staff recommendation? Because that was my biggest concern too, is just being used as a storage area. I think, yeah, that the roof line, but also lighting too, because that may be, you know, some people may go over the top with this, you know, that patio lighting, real dramatic, because it's gonna be more like an entertainment area outside for some
Do their
people.
standards apply to them? Don't we have that taken care of back here?
I don't know if it is residential use to residential, I don't think we.
Yeah, I think we have that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you know, the storage stuff, we didn't include that in here because code enforcement already,
Okay.
it's already taken care of. So we were focusing strictly on the carport issue itself.
Okay.
But each of the homes that are affected and an issue denied are homes where the carport was constructed after the ordinance prohibiting their construction, if that set off had already been passed.
Yeah.
So any of the,
This ordinance goes back in the early 80s or 90s, and you can't tell when any of these were built.
Yeah.
And neither can the owner, because they bought it from somebody else, and it was either, like, to your point, already built.
so how would we then determine which house would not then be grandfathered in the sense that if the carport was constructed
So we're not-
prior to the passage of the ordinance?
Prove their grandfather, because what we're gonna
Yeah.
show is it was built without a permit.
Right. So the approach that we're doing is, if you grant this exception, you know, to allow them to do the carports inside of that 20-foot setback, then they have to come forward with a permit and get a structural engineer to say your carport, you know, passes muster, essentially. Because there's probably some out there that won't, and they'll have to take them down or get them, you know, redo them so that they do comply.
Is there any prospect for, I mean, do we have, like, I know the art stuff won't pay for it, but any kind of grant money that would be able, what if their carport passes muster, but they can just, their fixed income, they can't afford it? To have an engineer come out.
So,
I mean, you think lawyers are bad, wait till you see what engineers are charged.
hey. You know, we did talk to them about maybe
Present company accepted.
hiring someone that, you know, could do all of them, right? So maybe they could get some kind of,
Economy of scale.
Right.
yeah.
So what responsibility does this is maybe for you, does the city have in this case? So the person that applied for it doesn't live in this neighborhood. They go to the neighborhood where there's carports and identify everyone that's breaking code. And theoretically, the city should know that those are not, those were built, could not compliant. And so what responsibility does the city have in terms of those particular citizens and the improvements, as well as the behavior of, you know, one entity going and finding other issues because they were denied as well?
That happens all the time. You catch one drug dealer, you'll catch them all. Right? Well, people snitch out people all the time. One of the things is we've always had, like, we haven't had an army of code enforcement officers because your community's newer in a lot of ways. So we don't have a lot of systemic problems in that regard. But, you know, it's just, you can't catch all the speeders. Just because people speed and they don't get caught doesn't give condemnation for the next guy. So it's just a matter of now it's come to everyone's attention,
Right.
and now it's an issue. It's less of an issue for this neighborhood just because of where the houses, when they were built. I know the council took that into consideration. The fact that we have a lot of elderly and fixed income people living in those facilities, they took that into consideration. And they wanted to try to accommodate this neighborhood. I don't think that as a council, there's a lot of desire to extend this problem to other places. In other places, you probably got a deed covenant that doesn't allow you to have them anyhow. So that's why it's a real problem for us, because we've had deed restrictions in all of our newer neighborhoods. Anything built prior to 1990 may not have that. I mean, if you go over to, off of South Coppell Road, and neighborhoods in there, older homes are smaller, one-car garage, very front entry, so.
So just one follow-up to that. I mean, I get the speeding analogy, but I don't want to like collectively, I'm not pointing at the city, but I don't want to collectively let us all off the hook because we have a limited number of code enforcers or we can't catch every speeder. I think we have to as a community take some responsibility for, they've been there, and if we're only waiting until a neighbor turns on your neighbor to call out a code. Now, if you can't see it in your backyard, that's a little different. But if you can drive down the alley and see them, we know they're there. Then I want us to sort of philosophically rectify. I know this is a little more of a philosophical thought, but philosophically rectify of like,
and that was part of the reason the council wanted to maybe consider doing this for this neighborhood, because they felt they had some responsibility, because they quote allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
Or why not enforcing it?
Sure.
Because we have you know two code enforcement officers, you know, and our staff is small, and the code enforcement officers that we have right now, you know, have been here less than a year, 2 years, so they obviously would not know anything about it. And this is not something that happens just here in Coppell. This happens at every city, everywhere.
The clerk at the desk that gives the permits said, I'm getting a permit for Sherwood Park for Carport. I drove down there yesterday and there were 6 carports. They wouldn't even look at the zoning ordinance, to be honest with you. and then the code enforcement officers change, or the permitting people change. I hate to say this, but I might be the oldest SOB here, so, you know, I've been coming out here since 1980.
Yeah.
So that's why I know the dates, and, you know, people that have moved in the last 20 years, may not even know where Sherwood Park is.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that our permit technicians now, if someone applies for a carport, they would know. And it goes through and it gets reviewed by our planning staff, or our plan reviewer. So, you know, we've got everything in line. So we have not had a permit been approved for a carport since.
Let's ask the practical question of the city. Mary, what damage is there if this area gets permitted for carports by the city council and the planning commission? What harm's going to happen?
I don't think there is a harm per se. They've been there for 20 plus years. And unlike a newer community or subdivision, you know, they do have only a one-car garage. So I can understand them wanting to, you know, a lot of homes have 2 cars. They want to protect their vehicles, especially since we live in Texas, we get a lot of hailstorms and other storms. So I think it would just be bringing forward, it's already there, you know. I think
And there's no HOA in this neighborhood.
And there's no HOA in this neighborhood.
It's part of that, and that was consideration.
Yeah, because my HOA would throw a fit at a carport.
Yeah, and I think the council, in their discussions, really were a little contrite about this, that they felt that their predecessors, or we had quote, allowed it to happen. It's an elderly, there's a lot of elderly, long-time residents of the city that lived there, wanted to stay in Coppell, and there was no harm, no foul. Some of the rest of the council, not all the council agreed with that position. Some of them were very concerned about this because one of them made a comment that I moved from Mississippi to see this. And so not everybody's like mine, like maybe all of you are not like mine, but there was some real concern there that this area would be okay. They were concerned about the outside storage.
Well, that's a genuine issue, and that's something we could ride around, but I don't really put all the blame on the city at all, or, you know, the limited number of compliance we have at all. People have been driving down those alleys, past their neighbors' car parts for decades, and no one saw fit to complain about it. I mean, so if the people living there, next door to the guy with the carport, or next door to the 3 people with the carport, has been driving past it for 15 years. And
But you don't know, that your neighbor doesn't know that you have a permit and you don't.
But it doesn't sound like any of them have a permit.
Well, but this person was doing it right by going in to ask for a permit.
Right.
Then got
And
denied, and just went, what the heck, you know?
Right.
Right. Well, I could see going forward not allowing any new carports, but I am concerned about, you know, someone bought the house. I mean, it's an illusory burden. If you're asking someone, if you can show that you had this carport before the ordinance was passed, well, how are they supposed to do that? I mean, you're asking them to prove something that they'll never be able to prove. So you might as well just ignore that and just say, well then, okay, we don't care whether it was constructed before the ordinance was passed or not. We're gonna make you hire a structural engineer and come in and pay for that, or we're gonna make you demolish it. I mean, I'd rather grandfather everybody in that's got one, and then just say from this point on, if you want a carport, you have to get a permit. If you sell the house, when the building inspection goes out, they're gonna inspect the carport, and if it doesn't meet the current requirements, then that's gonna be red tagged. You're gonna have to have that fixed before you can sell the house.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't have a problem, I have a real problem with telling a bunch of fixed income people that we're gonna drop a $1,000 tab on them, and they're gonna lose the carport that they've had for 15 years. And I don't think it's the city's fault, some poor compliance guy that, he's got all these homes, what, we got 14,000 roofs here or something? And he's supposed to spot something? I don't blame the city person. People been driving by it, living next to it for decades, and they didn't seem to have any concern about it.
I will tell you, I drive by it every day and I was bothered by it. But how do I know that they had a permit or not? I drive up and down Moore all the time. Those are the two that bother me, to be honest with you. But,
Off more, I've seen
yeah,
that.
yeah. And they do put storage things out there on occasion. And one guy had a garage sale last weekend under one of those carports, which is okay, but there's storage and stuff. But which kind of leads me to, back in, I don't know, how many years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years, 5 years ago, there was a Coppell beautification, and part of that beautification was there was going to be bushes up along that canal. Whatever. So
Good question.
that would help.
I like that question.
That.
Yeah, most of those bushes died.
But no, they did not get installed along Moore.
So just one comment, so
that would help.
just to be clear, so I wasn't blaming the city, and I think it's just something we need to, like, the collective responsibility for kind of the world around us. I think we just need to take that into consideration, because I agree with Jim that it's a difficult task to ask someone that didn't know about this, didn't put it in, just bought the house, it was already there, there's a bunch of carports in the neighborhood, for them to think that there's something wrong, or that they have to reach in their pocket and have, a structural engineer come out to verify the structural integrity of this, when there might be 10 other things in the city that a structural engineer should probably go look at. I'm not saying there is, but there could be. So I think those are all kind of considerations that I think are pretty important to consider.
Right, and so permits are required for a reason. And so if someone gets hurt because one of those carports collapses, we didn't require a permit, then that's a big deal. That's why we're requiring a permit. And so, some of those are dilapidated, and I would not feel comfortable with you guys, with council approving it and us not requiring some sort of permit. So,
This was kind of our way to say, okay, if it's allowed, then we want to make sure that it's safe to be there.
Yeah.
But
Right,
we're saying if we grant this PD, that others could go up within this PD.
Correct.
And that's probably okay, because that requires a new building permit and structural integrity.
Right.
And if they're gonna sell these units, it's gonna have to pass building inspection.
Well, two things. When you sell a home or a building, you get an inspection and they tell you whether it's permitted or not. That's part of your inspection. But the second thing is hypothetically. But the second thing is if you permitted something back in 1980, it may not be structurally intact 40 years later. So, it still could be a safety issue if it was allowed back then.
right.
And they got
So
it.
we look at it when they pull the permit to make sure it's structurally
Right,
sound.
but 40 years from now, do you go back and check it again?
No.
No, it's not.
Right, because it won't be
Right.
structural, it may or may not be structurally.
Right, absolutely. I see your
But
point.
that would be triggered if they sold it, right? And then the building,
That's true.
Yeah, but if there's a sale, if there's not a sale, and it's just 4 or 5 years down the road,
Yeah, a lot of these have undergone sales and nothing was brought to our attention that they needed a permit, so.
That means the building inspector thought the garage roof was safe.
That's not it was never brought to our building inspector.
Not the city's
No, no,
building.
no.
Okay.
The
yeah,
homeowners
yeah,
inspectors when they're buying the
Or they
building.
they were told it was unpermitted and they said, okay, I'll buy it anyway.
Gotcha.
I guess going back to some of the questions, do you see a lot more of our citizens asking for this, getting a permit? Is that?
that's the reality. If this is approved, then on a case-by-case basis, any neighborhood could come in, you bring 50% of the neighborhood in. We want carports, we'll dress them up with whatever, wood, stone cladding, but we want carports. It's, in my mind, gonna open it up.
To other neighborhoods. How many other neighborhoods are older, like the 1980s with one-car garages with limited parking. I mean,
Almost none.
There's at least, I think, probably 3 or 4 that are right around that one.
mhm,
Just when I looked at the different zonings, like the TH1, TH2,
mhm.
and the year that they were all kind of approved. Because I did have people, you know, from other neighborhoods saying, hey, I saw the sign. Typically, they were just calling saying, hey, what are they doing? Are they gonna build apartments here? I was like, no. And then, you know, I've had the couple where they were like, oh, because I would like to add a carport as well. So, is it a reality? Yeah, it's a reality. I'm sure you're gonna have a few people that would want to do it. In the rear, is that such a bad thing? I don't know.
Well, they can come apply for a permit.
Right, so there, you know, there's other townhome or duplexes or 0 lot line ones that were probably done at the same time, that probably had similar characteristics, whether it's 1-car garage or no car garage. But we'd have to examine each one as they came in.
Let's talk about the ones off of Hertz.
I think even just off of Parkway, there's a few.
Yeah.
So during this entire period of time, going back 10, 20 years, if you didn't have a carport, you wanted one, and you tried to pull a permit, then you were told you couldn't have it?
Correct.
Okay.
Wait a minute, so we allow carports now if they meet certain setback conditions?
No.
We don't allow them, period.
That's why you're right about opening.
Yes, we do. They're permitted as long as they have a 20-foot rear yard setback.
But there's not a lot
No one
of,
can meet the requirements.
but there's not a lot of
Very
lots.
few,
Right.
very
Right.
few.
Right.
Yes.
You'd have to have a really long driveway,
Yeah.
like a 40-foot
You'd have to
driveway.
have a huge lot.
'Cause that's huge right there.
Yeah, we do allow them. Are there a lot of lots that meet those requirements? Probably not.
But the.
And deed
Probably
restrictions,
higher end homes. they don't
restrictive
want
covenants within a lot of the HOAs don't allow for carports anymore.
Anything is
So-
probably built after 1992, 93, probably got some restrictions.
So,
Yeah,
you know-
one thing
And
before
probably
we
two
go out
car
there,
garage anyways.
could you call the sign ordinance case first so we can just get that out of the way?
Sure.
And anyone that's here for that case, which there might be a few, I don't know. Yeah, call that one first so that we withdraw that
It's at
case
9.
first.
6:45 plus the 6:50, any other questions? Any questions of city attorney?
Do you want to go forward with this case tonight, or do you want to have, I'm not suggesting that, what I'm hearing from you is very different from what I've heard from the council.
Going forward with this case? Yeah, I do. Yeah. Hopefully we can reach resolution
No, I'm
tonight.
just saying, a lot of times, you know, it's like, you need to hear from them, why do we have this case? It's not staff driven, it was the council requested staff to bring it forward.
No hill for a climber, Bob.
They can still hear it if we deny it, right?
Sure, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They will definitely-
So there shouldn't be a
Sometimes they
reason.
don't like to be adverse with the council,
I would say
or
we
we want
just
to be on the
move
same
forward.
page, but
Right.
Well,
I do have one question, Bob.
Yeah.
So Jim's idea about grandfathering, does that present a whole different set of issues versus the PD approval?
yes, it's a different ordinance.
But it's possible.
It's a solution to the problem.
But it's not
It's
a
a different
preferential
solution.
solution.
It's not the solution that's on the agenda tonight.
That's not the solution that is on the agenda tonight, and that's not the solution that staff was asked to bring to you.
if we have the discussion, this shows I'm still a newbie in respect to the immense experience that y'all have on this body. But can we still have the discussion and table it and not take a vote?
Let's see how it goes. If there's a lot of issues still out there, then I say we continue it.
Because the grandfathering thing is something that may be worthy of further pursuit. I just, like, you know my concerns.
Well, can I, under your theory, the grandfather, so if they sold it, then the grandfather no longer takes effect, and they would have to tear down the carport.
The buyer would have to make arrangement to either bring it
They'd
to
have to-
code or
Well, but
or if
code-
the setback didn't
right.
allow it, then they would have to
Right,
demolish it.
the code right now is a 25-foot setback.
20, no,
20 something,
none of
right,
them.
which is impossible, so they'd have to tear the carport out.
Right, but at least we're not going to them with, what if they moved in 5 years ago and they want to live there another 10 years or they're moving out in 3 months and they don't want to spend the money or, just any number of problems.
I don't know, I wonder what the permit fee is.
Car tears it out and all that.
Yeah. This,
Or the idiot
Same would
son
apply in the
burns it
PD?
down.
Well, no, you're
No.
right, we would allow it.
See, it's.
the PD is
it's-
cleaner.
Yeah, the PD is the clean solution.
But it does open it up for other neighborhoods.
Maybe.
No, PD is unique on its own merits.
True. That's right.
So it does not open it up for other neighborhoods. They could claim it opens it up, but it does not legally open it up for any other neighborhood.
It sets precedent.
Unless they come back here and get it separate PD.
Right.
Right,
Okay, so they would have to do that.
yes.
Yeah.
So there is a clean solution.
Anything else on this case, Mayor?
Nope.
Any other questions of the city attorney while we're here?
No.
Is the city attorney attending our meeting?
Oh,
I was told to be here.
wow.
Okay.
That's why we felt.
Then I deserve the right to ask additional questions.
hold on, guys, wait.
Sorry.
So just so you know, that we did send out letters. We had basically 17 people in favor from the 200 feet, 1 opposed. We had 134 people from Sherwood Park sign a petition to request this. So, and then I think Matt was saying that if you had questions, you could go back into executive session.
Yeah, if you have questions for the city attorney, you can call an executive session. Your questions have to be directed at the attorney, not any discussion amongst yourselves.
Okay.
A quick question, so that 134, how many homes are in that area?
200.
314.
Okay.
There's a bunch.
Wow.
So within 200 feet, which includes the 200 and however 64, there's 314. And then 800 feet, there's an additional 392. And we had 1 in favor and 3 no comment. We had a lot of people just say call because they saw the sign. So I have here like a whole spreadsheet with everyone who made some kind of contact and
Wow.
where they live, phone number, blah, blah, blah. And in favor, not in favor, no comment, et cetera. And I'll-
Y'all are so squared away. I'm just constantly impressed.
All right, guys, it's 6:53, we'll take a quick restroom break, and then let's try to get started right around 7.
Yes, sir.
So it is 6:53, and I'll turn the work session.
Thanks.
We're still waiting on a few people, so we'll try to gin up right around 7 o'clock. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the time is 7 o'clock. We are reconvening into regular session. Apologies for the delay. An item or two that caused for a few extra questions back in our work session. So thank you all for coming tonight. I do have a list of quite a few number of folks that would like to speak. Some of the requirements on speaking, you have up to 3 minutes. Cammie has I think a buzzer or a friendly bell that'll let you know your time is about up. So try to keep to the point so we can keep moving tonight. But more importantly, thank you for coming out. Without input tonight, it makes our decision harder. So not only the information from staff reports, but also you all as residents of our fine community, it's important that we hear from you too. Okay, so item 5 is citizens' appearance. Any person wishing to speak on any matter that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on anything not on the agenda tonight? Okay, I don't see any, but we allow for that up to 2 minutes, and that's for those items. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to, I'm sorry, did Mary receive any comments, or Matt, did you receive any comments? Okay, so then we'll close the citizens' appearance, move on to item 6, that's the approval of our March 17th meeting, the meeting minutes. Are there any discussions, or is there a motion by the commission on the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission of March 17, 2022 be approved as written.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I second.
Second, Commissioner Guerra. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, I will take one item out of order tonight. We're going to move up item 9. This is an item that will be continued, so I'd like to get this out of the way. I'll turn it over to Matt Steer for item 9. That's regarding the sign ordinance text amendments and public hearing continuation. Matt?
Right, so we're proposing to bring these proposed changes back on May 19th, 2022 to the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with another sign ordinance amendment that was not included previously in this item description. Therefore, staff recommends that the public hearing be closed, in this case, would be withdrawn from consideration. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any questions of staff by the commission? Okay. So I will close the public hearing, or do we? Okay, go ahead, and I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second on closing the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to close the public hearing.
Cammie, can you call the roll on the closing of the public hearing?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, so that's closing that public hearing. I want to make a motion that we continue this case to the May 19th planning zone. Bring a new one altogether? Okay, very good. Okay, back on track here. Item 7 is public hearing, the Stratford Manor HOA hog fence. This is a consider approval of PD-161R3-SF-12, Stratford Manor HOA hog fence, a zoning change request from Plan Development 161 Revision 2, Single Family 12 to Plan Development 161 Revision Number 3, Single Family 12, to allow for a hog wire fence on the HOA lot number 14X, Block A, on 2.3 acres of land located at the end of the cul-de-sac of Stratford Lane at the request of the Stratford Manor HOA. We have a staff presentation by Mary Prone-Boswell. Mary?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. This public hearing is for Stratford Manor HOA lot fence to allow for a hog wire fence on lot 14X, Block A, approximately 2.3 acres of land located at the end of the cul-de-sac on Stratford Lane. So I'm going to begin with a brief history on wild pigs, taken from an article written by John C. Kinsey of CWB and posted on the Texas Parks and Wildlife website. So pigs are not native to North America, but brought to North America by the explorers. Domestic pigs were brought as a low-maintenance source of food, and as the explorers moved across the continent, those domestic pigs left behind to fend for themselves became feral. The article goes on to say that from 1982 to 2016, the wild pig population in the U.S. has increased from 2.4 million to 6.9 million, with 2.6 million estimated to be residing in Texas alone. The population in the U.S. continues to grow rapidly due to their high reproduction rate, general diet, and lack of natural predators. Wild pigs can start breeding as young as 6 months of age, with females having an average litter size of 4 to 6 piglets, and can potentially breed a couple times a year. Wild pigs are omnivores and consume between 3 to 5% of their body mass daily. According to the article, it claims that wild pigs are listed as one of the top 100 worst exotic invasive species in the world. Most damage caused by the wild pigs is through either rooting or direct consumption of plant and animal material. They are capable of transmitting at least 30 bacterial, fungal, and viral diseases which threaten humans, livestock, and wildlife. So the property under discussion for this zoning request is a 2.3-acre HOA lot located at the end of Stratford Lane and backs up to Denton Creek. This lot is heavily treed, and there's the 100-year floodplain is located at the rear portion of the lot, approximately 256 feet from the cul-de-sac. The fence is about 73 feet off the cul-de-sac, approximately 180 feet from that floodplain area. The Stratford Manor has been dealing with the wild pig problem for about 2 years, to my knowledge. So Ms. McGill, who lives at 718 Stratford Lane, which abuts the HOA lot on the east side, and residents at 717 Stratford Lane, which abut the HOA lot on the west side, have had multiple run-ins with the wild pigs. So here are some pictures that they provided. The first run-in was in October of 2020 when they rooted up the front yard of Miss McGill. In September of 2021, the McGills witnessed the wild pigs in their front yard in the evening and thought that they had scared them off. Unfortunately, the next morning, both neighboring property owners awoke to damaged front yards. Here are some additional pictures. The wild pigs made another visit to the area on October 10th and 15th, 2021, again causing damage to the properties and landscaping. The residents did contact a trapper, and in their discussions with the trapper, the wild pigs, if trapped, would not necessarily result in a permanent solution. They decided not to hire the trapper, but instead opted to install a hog wire fence to stop the hogs from being able to access the street and, in effect, their neighborhood and front yards. So the hog wire fence is located on the HOA lot at the end of the cul-de-sac and ties into the two residential lots fences on the east and west side of Stratford Lane. I did go out there myself. The fence is not immediately visible from the street and requires an amendment to the plan development zoning because it is not the required decorative metal. So the hog wire panel is about 16 feet wide by 52 inches tall and tied to fence stakes. So here in this image you can see the red line represents the fence and its general location. It's tied into the side fences of the houses on either side of it. Let's see. And here are just some pictures of that fence. So you can see how tall it is, where it's tied into the existing decorative metal fences on the residential properties. The fence weaves its way through the tree line and topography, and it's not located in the 100-year floodplain. Our engineering staff did look at this as part of the plan review and did not have any issues with the location of that fence. The image on the left is an illustration of that hog wire fence. So it will have they have openings of 8 inches wide by 6 inches tall and the bottom 2 rows of the panel are 8 inches wide by 4 inches tall, which prevent the baby wild pigs from accessing. The fence is approximately 339 feet in length and about 73 feet from the cul-de-sac. So we did send out notices as required by state law to property owners within 200 feet. We had 16 notices sent. We received 6 in favor and 1 opposed. We also sent out courtesy notices within 800 feet. There were 67 of them. We did receive some feedback, 7 in favor, 1 opposed. In addition, we did receive petition, so signed petition in favor of the hog fence from 25 of the property owners of Stratford Lane. So staff is recommending approval of PD 161 R3-SF-12 hog fence for Stratford Manor, Lot 14X Block A, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the HOA will be responsible for repairing and/or replacing the hog fence in the event of work needing to be done by the city in the drainage easement or any utility work in a utility easement. Number 2, that a gate shall be added to the fence to allow city access to the city's drainage easement. And 3, that the fence area shall be kept free of debris. That is the end of my presentation, and I believe there are some members in the audience as well.
Okay, very good, Mary. Questions of staff by the commission? Freddie?
Mary, I do have one question. So with this fence, was there a permit required for this?
Yes, they did not get a permit. And so this fence does not meet the typical requirements for a fence. So that is why they're coming forward with an amendment to their PD, to their plan development, to allow this type of fence.
Okay. Mary, you mentioned that the fence has been up since late last year?
So I know that they had that issue in October. So I'm not exactly sure what date it went up, but it was after October.
Okay.
The applicant can probably
Okay.
answer that question.
We'll get to that, but since the fence has been up, date to be determined, have there been any other issues with adjacent streets with the hogs going onto their streets and?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, very good. Okay, so thank you, Mary, for the presentation there. Is there a presentation by the HOA on the item? Is there a spokesperson for the HOA here? Okay, let's bring you down first. Yeah, we'll need you to come up. I do have about 5 folks that have signed up to speak on the item. Not saying that you're the only 5. If others want to speak, we'll certainly do that. Oh, okay, while he's coming down, I'll ask you to hold for a second. I am so sorry. Jim had following question of staff.
On the fence area being kept free of debris, is it the expectation the homeowners association be responsible for that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I see that the gate will be added to allow the city access for the drainage easement work. What about the utility easement? If they have to tear down part of the fence to perform utility work, are they going to notify the HOA before they go in, or will the fence just be torn down for a while until the HOA figures it out and repairs it, or how would that work exactly?
That's a good question. With the city, we would, we're going to have a gate built in.
Gate installed, yeah.
Installed. And so we're going to work with them as to the location of that gate. For any other utilities, I would imagine that, I don't have a good answer for that.
Has there been any utility work done there anytime? I mean, No?
There
Okay.
you
Okay, thank you, Mary.
20 plus years.
That's all I
go.
had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You bet, very
I
good.
think
Thank you,
any of the
Jim.
utilities would probably be closer to the street anyway.
Yeah, Commissioner Walker, I don't believe there are any public utilities back there, actually. Other than the creek, access to the creek and drainage issues, because all the water, sewer, and all that is within the confines of this side of it.
Thank you so much, sir.
And for the record, this is the city attorney, Bob Hager, that's joining us tonight. We don't get to see Bob often, so only on big cases we get him. So if I could have your name and address for the record.
Okay. Greg Martinez.
Greg Martinez.
And I reside at 619 Stratford Lane.
Okay.
I am the president of the homeowners association.
So normally we receive some kind of presentation. If you have any initial thoughts regarding the case from the HOA position, we'd love to hear that, and then we may have questions of you, then we'll open up to the public for the public hearing.
Okay.
So if there's anything you'd like to open up with?
First, I'd like to thank Mary and her staff for presenting the basic situation that we have.
It's a mess.
Yeah, obviously that was the first impression, was the mess that was left. But once we learned a little bit more about these hogs and the diseases that they carry, made it a safety concern, not to mention the 300-pound hog running around in your yard. Because our community is actually turned around now. All the younger families with younger children are moving back into the neighborhood. And so the safety feature is one of the main concerns. And as we found, the trappers, you can't just kill a hog in Texas. You have to trap it live, and then they take it to a facility and analyze it for various diseases to then try to manage it and control it that way. Not to mention, you take one away, another one replaces it. So
Sounds like several more replace it.
yeah, yeah. So this type of fence was one of the neighbors' residents that lives right there. Brother-in-law was familiar with the situation, which is pretty prevalent in Texas. At least not as much in the cities, but I think it's a growing concern now, but in the ranching areas. So just to reiterate, our main concern is the safety and the damage, and this fence appears to do the trick. In this area that we're talking about is not a typical lot where you build a house. It is a wild and natural area. The foliage just grows on its own, and of course the creek is right behind there. So it does get really filled up, and this fence is not visible. And from our understanding from the trapper and other people, the other type of fences are not going to prevent the hogs from coming through. They tend to uproot some of the other type of fences without reinforcement. So this one has done the trick, and we haven't seen any indication of any hogs. Other than that, that's basically where we stand. And
Okay.
if you have any questions, I'm available.
Very good, thank you. Number one, when did the fence go up?
I believe it was at the end of last year. Mid-October.
Mid-October.
Like Mary said, pretty much after the latest event.
And then to follow on Commissioner Guerra's question about the permit required, did you think you needed to visit with Coppell to get a permit?
Actually, the neighbors who lived right there, because it was their yard that it was affected, they just assumed that they could do to help their situation and didn't think about it. Because it isn't, because we understand the permitting process with regard to I guess the way the fence is, ordinance is read, where it's more is what is visible to the street. Well, this one's not visible to the street, and it was, put into an area where it wouldn't be up there and would effectively keep them out.
Are you aware of any change in travel patterns that have caused any issues with neighboring streets, or have you heard of anything?
No, we haven't heard of anything like that.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant by the commission? Commissioner Guerra.
I do have one question, sorry. I guess in regards to the fence itself, being an HOA, do you have standards for fences that would be built or repaired within your neighborhood?
I don't believe that we have one that's different from Coppell in general. We have the typical wood fence and stone fencing, wrought iron fence.
So I guess follow-up question, was that considered when this fence was being erected?
No, it wasn't. More so because of its location. It's totally in a wild area that's not maintained in any way, shape, or form. I think basically it's not supposed to be.
Okay, thank you.
So even though y'all didn't try to pull a permit to put that fence out there, I presume that the people that had it constructed understood they had the support of the HOA in the area?
After the fact, yes.
Okay.
Once-
So the
once-
HOA has no objection, and you're here to support the...
Exactly,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
On behalf of the homeowners association, I'm the one, or we are as a group, but I am the representative. Because technically, the homeowners association owns that lot.
Okay,
not-
that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? I got 2 follow-up questions.
Okay.
With regards to, I'm sorry? Okay. With regards to the installation of a gate, what do you kind of see as happening there?
That I don't know. We have to, I guess we'll have to look at that, look
Yeah.
into that, and how
Yeah.
it'll work.
Okay. And are you in agreement with the conditions as stated in the staff report?
Yes, it's more than understandable.
Okay.
Yeah. Like any other, something you put in front of a utility. It's your responsibility.
Thank you very much. We may call you back up after
Sure.
the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we do have 5 people that have signed up to speak on the item. Please note that you have 3 minutes to express your thoughts to the commission. We'll start first with Tina Boyd, and then it'll be followed by Joe Boyd. And if I could get your name and address for the record when you're there at the podium.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Boyd, and I live at 723 Cambridge Manor Lane. And I am here in opposition to the hog fence.
Okay.
Our yard is to the side of the said property, and we do see the fence. We talked to the homeowner after questioning her about all the activity that was going on there, and that was when we learned that she did not have a permit to put the fence in. And I did reach out to their HOA president, and he never did respond back to me. I am the chairman of the landscape committee for our community, Cambridge Manor Estates. So I do deal with the hog issue when they come into our area. When their yard was hit, our yard was hit as well. I do feel that the fence is going to channel the hogs and other wild animals into our community. I do object to the fence because I think if you allow this precedent to go forward, other communities that back up to any of the creeks here in Coppell are going to want to do the same thing, and I think that that could be an issue moving down the road. I also think there could potentially be a flooding issue there when that is a low-lying area, and when it does rain, it does flood. And in fact, it does come into our yard as well. So we do worry if there's any potential heavy rains or any type of flowing of water, that could also be an issue as well. And I would appreciate y'all considering maybe making some changes.
So, didn't anticipate a negative, but thank you for the input. From your perspective, since the fence has been put up, have you seen any damage?
No.
Okay. From your perspective, has there been any damage to any of the adjacent neighboring streets on the lots there?
To my knowledge, no. The same time that their yard got hit, like I said, our yard got hit, and probably about a year prior to that, we did have some extensive damage done to our cul-de-sacs. They didn't really hit too many yards, but we did have some major issues. So I'm just more worried about the routing of the animals, going through there. Because it wouldn't be just hogs. It would be coyotes, certain larger animals. I mean, we've had deer back there, believe it or not. We've had lots of different animals. And, we would love to put up a hog fence, but our area is quite more expansive than their area. So that was just not something we can do. We know we live on a creek, and this is something that we have to deal with.
So from the image on the screen, which lot is yours again?
I am right there in the corner. I look at the fence. So their lot is a little set back from ours, and ours is a little farther forward. We're right
Okay,
at the very
gotcha.
end.
Okay.
And I do question the length of the fence and also the area of it, because where the fence starts on their property, on their fence, there's a wrought iron fence right there, and it goes all the way to like the front of their home, and then that's the part that's exposed. So I was kind of curious as to why they felt like they had to start it so far back and then arc it out over to the house across the street. They've also put in an additional fence. They had a gate because they have bird feeders out there that they have out there, which is perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that. But when they put the fence in, the original gate was to the right of the fence. And then that's what actually alerted me to it, because there was a gentleman there putting another gate on the other side of the fence. So now there's two gates, one on the right of the wire fence and one on the inside of the wire fence. And I get it, it's so that they can have access to their bird feeders out there. But she's also had landscapers out there that have kind of cleaned the area out a little bit, and they've been cutting down bushes and stuff. So she's maintaining that space now from the wire fence to her wrought iron fence, which is actually the HOA's property. And I just kind of question that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Joe Boyd. And Mr. Boyd will be followed by Anusha Tatishetty. Hopefully I got that right. Okay, Mr. Boyd, your name and address for the record.
Joe Boyd, 723 Cambridge Manor Lane. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioner, for allowing us to talk tonight. Mary, can you back up one slide so I can show exactly where we're looking at there? Yeah. One more, please. One more. One more. I'm sorry. Keep going. We'll get there. If you look at that green part up there, just to the right of it, that last lot on the top right there, just to the right, yes, that's our lot there. And it backs up to where the fence is, and you can absolutely see it. And about the last month since foliages came out, you can't see it from the street, but you can still see it from our backyard. I wrote down a few notes. Let me go to them here. In 1979, I made the decision to move to Coppell and built my first house here. I've built 4 others since then, and all of them in Coppell. When I moved to Coppell, the city limit sign said it had a population of 1,200. I'm not sure if that number was animals or people. There wasn't even a traffic signal here. There was an abundance of wildlife here then, and there still is. When we moved into the animals' territory, they did not encroach on ours. Each time I've moved to the newest and northernmost housing addition in Coppell. With each move, there's always been wildlife here, and there always will be. At my house, I see wildlife including snakes, skunks, fox, bobcats, raccoons, possums, and even an occasional deer, just to name a few. A couple of summers ago, I trapped my record for 1 year of 9 armadillos and released them into the wild outside of the city limits. When I built my home in Cambridge Manor, I had the very first choice of any lot in that addition. With first choice, I chose the lot next to the creek and woods, knowing there would be wildlife that would be there too. Anyone else moved into these lots knew what was there when they moved in. We had the option of a wood privacy fence, but chose to have a wrought iron fence in our fence so our family could see and enjoy the beauty of the nature around our home. I presently have the joy of looking at a hog fence. If this fence is permitted, it should be at the very least conform to the city codes on building materials. I'm very much opposed to this type of fence being in any type of permanent structure in Coppell. I'm also confused why the unsightly hog fence is built where there's already a wrought iron fence already in place. This past October, we had the misfortune of wild hogs visiting our yard. The hogs have also visited our neighborhood several times. By erecting this fence, it only serves to herd the hogs from one neighborhood into the next and only concentrating the damage. Ordinances are made by the city for the good of everyone. There are times when exceptions and variances are and should be made, if it is for the good of all parties involved. However, this is not the case, and this hog fence that only serves as an entrance for a ramp for the hogs to enter the Cambridge Manor neighborhood. I'd like to show where that fence doubles up there. If you go back to that same slide, Mary. If you'll look right there, you were good, Mary, the last one. Yeah. See where that red fence goes all the way down almost to my lot? That fence could end about 60 or so feet further over and serve the same purpose, and then I wouldn't see it.
Further to the
left.
West.
Yes. It has no purpose there when you've already got a wrought iron fence that's probably 10 times stronger.
And the wrought iron fence extends along the property line that abuts your property.
All the way to the back, but can I go over there and look at it?
Wish we had a laser pointer. Yeah. Okay.
And that's all. Have any questions of me?
From your perspective, has there been any shift in animal migration, daily migration into your neighborhood?
I don't know
Or
the
your
exact
your-
date that they were hit in October. I know mine was late October. I posted something on Facebook like everybody else does and had a lot of questions from it. But this will only concentrate them into the next neighborhood over if that fence remains. Because they do come up on the creek bed. Both of us are on the creek bed. They can't get in one place, they'll come in the other.
It looks like extensive damage from the pictures we saw from those residents on Stratford Lane. What's the value of the impact on damage to your property that you've experienced?
I had the same type pictures on mine that I posted, so.
$1,500, $1,000?
Probably, but it's only going to be concentrated on our neighborhood now because they're not going to be able to go to another neighborhood and find another way out. So there's not any purpose for this fence other than to divert them to our neighborhood.
And from your perspective, if the fence were moved a little further to the west or the arc was drawn a little further to the west, you'd be okay with that? So it's further out of your view or altogether?
I'm saying I don't want the fence there.
Oh, at all?
Okay? But if you're going to put a fence up, at least move it over and make it a wrought iron fence like it should be.
Gotcha. Okay.
And connect those two over there. I mean, and then put a gate in and do it properly. I mean, this isn't a neighborhood that has got no upkeep on it. Both these neighborhoods are very nice, and everything in there is very nice. Our homeowners association wouldn't allow this fence. It's wrought iron or wood. And what I'm looking at from my backyard now, I don't think their homeowners association would agree with it either, if it's in their covenants. And I'm sure they had the same covenants that we do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is Miss, Anusha Tatashetty? All righty. Hopefully I didn't tear that up too bad. And that'll be followed up with George Cooper next. Your name and address for the record?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anusha Tatashetty, and I live on 717 Stratford Lane. So we just moved here in October, and this was the first welcome site that I saw. As you can see, this left picture, that's my property. And that's some pretty good damage that the hog has done. And other than aesthetic concerns, I think I'm more concerned for the safety of my kids, because we live in the cul-de-sac, and the adjoining, the neighbors and all, they have small children who usually come out and play. And that's what I liked about moving to Coppell, where the kids come out and they tend to play and all that, which I've lived elsewhere and they don't do that. So that's what I really like about this neighborhood, and so I'm more concerned about the safety of my kids. Right now, you cannot see the fence, and with all the foliage and all that growing in, you literally cannot see the fence from the, from the streets and all. So I feel I'm for the fence. And this fence, it just avoids the hogs from coming in. After the fence was put, I saw a bobcat moving in. I see snakes, I see armadillos, I see other wildlife. So I'm not against any other wildlife. This fence is just for the hogs. And hogs are pretty big creatures. They can, they can hurt any child. So I'm more concerned for the safety of my kids, and I feel we need the fence.
Thank you very much. Question for you, though.
Yeah, sure.
If there was a comment from the commission to alter the fence, move it, shorten it, whatever, something, what's your thought on that?
I'm fine with that because one end of the fence connects to my property. So if I was more concerned about that, I would have objected to that, but I don't mind it.
And how about constructing it to the standard of other fences, i.e. wrought iron or whatever?
I don't mind. Because right now, even with the fence, the property that's behind us, they are still able to access the woody area, the wooded area. They're still able to access it with the fence in place. So it's not like the fence is completely blocking access to the properties behind us. They are still able to access the property.
So did you have the fence installed?
It wasn't me personally,
Well,
but I had.
You engaged someone?
I did give permission to that.
Did you think to get a permit?
I didn't know about that. Yeah, I just moved in, so I didn't know about all that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
George Cooper. While he's coming up, is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Just raise your hand. Okay, we'll get you in a minute.
Hi, guys. I'm
Good evening.
George Cooper. I live at 706 Stratford Lane. My house is well marked by two containers, steel containers that were in the driveway since February 2021. They're gone now. However, we've lived here for a few years, and my introduction to Coppell, the first Saturday I was here, was a wildcat on my outdoor kitchen roof. No problem with wildlife. However, as a physician and a father, I want to draw a sharp distinction between feral hogs and wildlife. Feral hogs are capable of not only property damage, but as a physician, human damage. There was a lady in a suburb of Houston who was actually attacked and killed by feral hogs. It's a problem not only in Texas, it's a problem in California. It's a problem going up and down the East Coast these days. I can't imagine a time out of school hours that we don't have 6 kids in our cul-de-sac in the middle of the street playing. I mean, should they be exposed to an animal that's 300 pounds, is not very considerate of who is in its way or what it intends to do. So I have to echo my neighbor's concerns about children. I have kids there too. I have not the property damage that's been sustained, but I certainly know my share of property damage. And for that, I'd like to consider really emphasizing that this is a safety issue. And it would be a terrible thing for one child. I could see things. I'm not used to having neighbors behind me. I have a wonderful neighbor behind me. I'm not used to seeing things. But, if you've got a fence over here and you see it, you want to risk a child's life? I don't. I'm not going to make that decision. The fence was put up kind of proactively by our neighbors who saw the damage and had the wherewithal of having a rancher in the family who knows how to handle hogs. In reference to your question about a different type of fence, it won't keep the hog out. It's simple. It won't do it. You have to rely on someone's expertise to tell you that. I have no issues with this fence at all. You'd have to go looking for it to see it.
A hog fence versus a wrought iron fence.
Correct.
Wow.
Why that is, I don't know, but I'm sure that rancher could explain it to you.
From your perspective, modification of that fence?
I don't think it's necessary. Why go through the expense of modifying anything?
I'm sorry, the location of it.
Well,
to address the concern from Cambridge Manor.
Again, in a best circumstance world, I'd extend that fence right through Cambridge Manor. I'd take it right down there, and that might be a city-financed plan to control these hogs. Take it all the way, right down Denton Creek, which is their chosen path of indulging in yards. I mean, it's kind of silly to think that if you take it out of our cul-de-sac, it's going to be any better for the next cul-de-sac or worse. I mean, Cambridge Manor should have access to the same thing. Let them put a proposal together and put a plan in there. Let Prestwick put a plan together and have a fence there. I don't see undoing this as doing any good. Sure. I mean, that's just not a reasonable health issue. And feral hogs they're not your hogs that come from Smithfield. I mean, that's a whole different animal, and these things breed twice a year. Yeah. It's a lot of little piggies. So anyway, any questions?
Thank you very much for your input. Okay, we had, ma'am. Anybody else after she's finished speaking there? Okay.
Hi. My name is Ruth Sine, and I'm at 638 Stratford Lane. And I should actually start by saying that I hate that we have this sort of contentious feeling with our neighbors at Cambridge, because we are such a close-knit community, and Cambridge is right up against us. And I feel like in some ways we are all one HOA, so I hate that there's conflict with this fence. But from my perspective, I completely agree with the fence. The neighbors that put up the fence, so I have 5 kids, just to give you some context. So I have 5 kids. My kids are ranging in age from 15 to 3. And they're like wild little feral pigs themselves, right? Keeping them in. And I know that an iron fence does not keep my kids in. But, I joke, but we have had feral pigs in our own backyard with our wrought iron fence. We've had them rooted, not to the extent that these other neighbors have had, but even with our iron fence, they have come in. And we, the neighbors that put up this fence proactively, as was said, are like grandparents to all of the kids. They are right on the cul-de-sac. The kids are back there in the cul-de-sac all the time, and they did it to protect our kids, which I appreciate that they would be proactive about it. Again, had it been me and I had been in their place, I wouldn't have thought to have reached out to the city. I know now that we probably should have gotten a permit, but at the time, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have just made some kind of fix to the problem that I saw. And, as was stated before, the pigs are very aggressive. They're dirty. They bring disease. And we've had our own encounter with feral hog that, it sounds funny, but it literally ran into our car and damaged our car, caused us to have a flat tire. It came in from under our car and up and around our car and pulled off our bumper. These are big animals, big, sturdy, disgusting animals. And so, in my opinion, I think that this fence is, a good thing for our neighborhood. I've appreciated it. I have seen less. We have a lot. I'm a city slicker. I did not imagine when we moved here several years ago that we would have the encounters with wildlife that we had. I don't know that I would have bought where I bought had I known that it was going to be as much as we have, and we've come to terms with that, but some of these animals are brazen. And, I remember my 1-year-old, when he could first start to walk, there was a raccoon in our yard, and he sort of was like, ooh, furry animal. Like, no, the raccoon did not move. This isn't, and the same has been, the case for these hogs, I imagine. But we've had less animals even come into our yard as a result of the fence, which I really appreciate. We had a dead raccoon and get stuck. I bungee cord my garbage cans because sometimes the raccoons get in, and we found a dead raccoon in there. Somehow it got in, but it couldn't get out, And I appreciate the fence and what it has done to create an atmosphere of safety for my kids that are still little and constantly out. So, but I hate that this is causing, difficulty with our neighbors, and I'd love to see a resolution. But as George said, the fence is doing its job, and the neighbors put in the fence at their own expense. It was only after that they approached the HOA, and the HOA members all voted and agreed that we would incur the cost that they had, we would pay them back for the cost because we felt like it was something that was beneficial for our neighborhood and our street. And we thought that we were actually doing good for the neighbors. So, it hurts me that we're not all aligned on that, but do you have anything for me?
I don't think so,
Okay.
but
Yes.
I will ask the commission if they do. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'd like to bring back Mr. Martinez, the HOA. While he's coming down, so a question for staff, with the continued growth of the feral hog population and the health safety concerns that brings, is this issue been discussed with council about what can we do to try to find ways to remedy it or to address the issue or at least control it? Or is it something that maybe needs to be put on the radar going forward, citywide, not just?
I know they've had issues in other areas where I think we've actually hired trappers to do some of this. I can definitely get with city management in terms of bring it to their radar again and see if there's anything that we can do. But like I said, I think it's an issue that is just going to become more prevalent.
Yeah, certainly worth active monitoring, that's for sure. Mr. Martinez, so there was the Cambridge Manor has a concern. The fence needs to be altered to enable city access, the access easement. So there's going to need to be an alteration to it. Can we find some resolution that'll work for the adjoining neighborhood, the Cambridge Manor folks, in addressing the location of it as part of the alteration of this? Is there a possibility for that?
I'm sure there's a possibility. I mean, the reason that fence was chosen was because of its effectiveness and the ineffective nature of the wrought iron fence and our wood fences in relation to it. So that's why that actual location, I don't see that would be an issue.
Okay.
Like shaving, getting it a little bit farther away from their yard. I mean,
Okay. Any questions, Jim?
Can we go back to that slide with the red line showing the fence location? Okay, so am I correct that there's a gap between the two wrought iron fences?
Okay, you can see where the cul-de-sac is brown,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
well, there's one house on the left and one house on the right.
Right.
Their wrought iron fences come out of the circle and go straight due east and due west.
Okay.
That gap you're talking about in the middle?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's open there.
Okay. So do you presume that the hogs were just taking the path of least resistance and coming through the gap?
Yes.
So,
because like you said, those wrought iron fences are their side borders of those lots.
yes, sir.
And where the cul-de-sac is, it is open right through that center section.
Right, okay, thank you for that. So the hogs were coming through the gap. I presume that prior to the erection of the hog fence, there was no damage occasioned to the wrought iron fence by any hogs?
No, like you said, that's
So you would
where-
presume they're coming through the gap?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I mean, I presume they're traversing up and down the creek area.
yes, sir.
And they take their offshoots as they get hungry or whatever. And
What would be, in your view, the efficacy of simply completing the wrought iron fence? Wouldn't that close the gap and ostensibly effectuate the same
other than it would
deterrence?
look weird because of the yards, the way the yards stop. Like the two yards don't connect. That's part of the HOA lot. That little, it's probably, 30-something, 40 feet around that arc of the cul-de-sac. And then it's just, not to mention right down the middle is the storm drainage area.
Is there something, though, that could be done that would just simply close the gap as a intermediate step that
Well-
wouldn't?
Well, I know on the right side, part of their wrought iron fence is in a wall, a stone wall underneath it. And I'm not sure about the one on 717, if they have the same retaining type wall as well. So you would have to, I mean, of course, it could be done, anything could be done, but I don't see the aesthetic part of it, how it would appear weird. I can't think of another word, because I believe the main purpose of that section is natural life, natural just wild, growth. Apparently, in the original platting, there were going to be houses there. But I don't know exactly how it came about, but the developer had to negotiate with the city, and they gave up those 2 houses in order to get the whole street done. And it became a wild area.
It seems to me that, I understand the concern about any kind of division amongst neighbors, but it does seem like there's a lot of common ground here. Nobody wants the hogs in their yard.
Right.
Nobody wants the damage occasioned by them. Nobody wants the health or safety threat that they present to children or vehicles. Good grief. But at the same time, it would seem to me, this was a fence constructed without a permit. It's not the most elegant solution. It's the same kind of hog panels that I put up around my feeder, which it's marginally effective. As long as you all don't put a corn feeder out there, it'll probably be fine. But
Right.
I don't know. I'd like to try to explore at least some immediate remedy that would close the gap, create a barrier to any kind of passage of the hogs into the neighborhood, protect kids, vehicles, yards, landscaping, all the things that, it's a residential area. That's why you're there. But maybe not necessarily have a 340-foot hog fence.
Are you suggesting something closer to the street?
Well, if that was physically what would result, then yeah. If you think it would be, what we don't know is if you close the gap with the same type of wrought iron, will it be effective, or will they just bull rush it down? And I've seen pigs do stuff that...
They root them up because they can get their nose underneath it.
And it's, look, this is a very persistent problem. I've engaged in my own hog eradication programs out at my hunting leases. It's plugging a giant hole in a dam with a very small finger. It's a very persistent problem, and now they're in the urban areas and the suburban areas. And so, all the problems that were occasioned on ranch land, farmland for decades now are now being visited upon the suburban areas. And, the city did try with those traps, the smart traps that have the video cameras, and then they feed them every day at the same time, and they get them used to coming into the traps, and then when they're all in the traps at once, they spring the traps and they haul them away. That was actually probably about 1/8 of a mile from my house. I live on Hawk. We haven't seen them since, but I'd be foolish to think we're not going to see them again. So, is there some way to explore a fix to the problem of the ingress and egress of hogs into the neighborhood that still addresses the aesthetic concerns and the concerns about having the fence nonetheless compliant with your covenants and restrictions as they exist today?
I can't say no. We're willing to do a lot of things, but we wanted the most effective means, comparatively speaking, and cost savings obviously is going to be a factor as well.
Well, that's why I was trying to think of, if you closed the gap, that would seem to be the shortest linear feet of wrought iron fence that you would have required. How long a distance do you think that would be?
These are property lines. I can't say exactly how far the fence comes down, but at least, 100 something feet. And I guess the question that I have would be, where would it go?
Yes, sir.
Because the property, the houses themselves, their wrought iron fence doesn't come all the way to the front of their property. It's more or less where their house comes. So, that's part of the setback. So it's not already there. It's a much bigger gap than I think this little drawing is showing.
The fences, are not allowed in the front yard. So the fences that they do have, like for this house,
Stop with the
7
building.
That's 18.
are behind the front building line. So if you look back this way, the fence is probably back in this way.
Actually, that might have to be, I don't think our covenants allow the fence to exceed from that setback line or the property, the house line. Not that that's that's why we're here, to try to get the variance anyways.
I guess I'll
Mitigate
let
it.
someone else talk. I don't want to, take up too much time, but I would like to see some kind of a more elegant solution that impedes the hogs from getting in and out of the neighborhood and threatening, life and limb and property and all that, because they're clearly, they're a menace. There's no question about it. But one that at the same time is a little bit more elegant and more compliant than just some hog panels.
Well,
and some
I guess this is
T-posts.
where the other question is how do you maintain the wild, nature of that section of land as well? By putting a kind of barrier like that, wouldn't that defeat that purpose?
I don't know, sir.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to it either, and that's why we're here.
But I won't top any more time. Thank you for your candor, sir.
Commissioner Bishop?
Thank you. Was I hearing correctly that the wrought iron fence is ineffective from preventing the hogs to come forward?
In general, I believe, it's, because the way it's generally constructed, which I think in this situation it would have to have some kind of footing. And then that would be encroaching onto that, don't do anything to that property.
Right.
We're not allowed to do anything like that, but I guess you could, just like anything, you can engineer it so it does work, but how much would that cost?
Right, and it seems to me, time will tell, but the type of fencing that you have installed now is effective for keeping the hogs out, but it is visible from the homeowner to the east, so maybe if you, as they talked about, move it a little bit to the west so it's not visible by the homeowners to the east, that may be
What about
the simple
planting?
solution. What about what?
What about doing some kind of planting in front of it? Would that be an option? I think things are going to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It thins out in the winter and then it really fills up in the summer. It's really.
Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Any other questions of the applicant by the commission? Ed?
Yes. So if the fence was moved slightly over, would it still keep the gap closed?
Yes, I'm sure.
Because in terms of thinking about Mr. Boyd's concerns and the concerns of the neighborhood, it seems to me, sort of listening to both sides, that a slight adjustment to the fence, so it's not in the view of the Boyd's property, and having the hog fence remain seems like a pretty good solution, since all of the neighbors around it would support it. It seems like that would kind of meet both requirements, if I'm, hearing everyone.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I had already closed the public hearing, ma'am, so, okay. Mary, if the commission had an additional consideration about, since the fence has to be adjusted for the access for a city, that a workable solution comes up, is that too open-ended, or would that stick? That a solution come up that meets the intent of what we're trying to do with the hog wire fence, at the same time it generally addresses the neighbor, the Cambridge Manor residents.
So I think what I hear you saying is that potentially move the fence further west, and maybe add a couple plantings in that HOA lot to kind of screen it a little bit. I think
And we leave it kind of generally open, but it's something like that gets addressed. Is that too open-ended? Do we need to say it shall do this, or can we just?
I think you could leave it to staff's discretion.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any comments or discussion by the commission? Freddie?
Just I'll go first. I think, 3 issues here. The permit, and if there was a permit, the requirements associated with that, and then also just their requirements as being an HOA, those standards. So none of that's been followed, so that's my concern with this.
Okay. Great point. Anybody else? Well, I'll add my thoughts there. I mean, I totally agree with the health safety concerns here, and finding a workable solution to address this with the, I'm okay with the hog wire fence. We move it further to the west. Hopefully we can create some, reduce the site impacts there, make everyone happy. I like to, this might sound different, but I like the temporary nature of it in that it can be removed easily and quickly if the hogs go away or they address some other, their patterns change altogether, they can be removed or whatever. So I'm okay with it. It's subject to moving the east side of that further to the west, just so that we address some of the site issues there. And I like the idea of doing some kind of planning, and I would leave it to staff to come up with a workable solution. That's my thoughts there. Any final thoughts by the commission?
Just to reiterate, I would generally agree with that. I think it seems pretty reasonable to leave the fence, slightly adjust it, potentially add some screening. It seems like it would accommodate both sides. I do think the health and safety, life safety issues are paramount to the situation. I certainly, looking at the aerial, you can see down the road there are some really large gaps, and so I'm sure that it may funnel the hogs down there. So I think it's wise for the city to take a look at that as well. But I think when you move into a neighborhood like this in a subdivision, you don't necessarily expect you may expect some wildlife, but you may not expect a hog in your front lawn. And certainly with kids playing, I think we have to, that's priority in terms of really anything else. And I mean, I get the point in terms of the permit, and we all have to do our part to make sure any improvements we're making that they're permitted. But it seems, I can understand the thought process of why this could have been potentially missed based on the temporary nature of the hog fence, as well as the impending potential life safety issue that if it wasn't constructed. So I would be in support of it. We'll be in support of it with a slight modification.
I do have the follow-on comment, and I don't mean to chastise from up here, but you really can't do anything in our community without a permit. At least talk to staff. So I don't know if it's something we need to have some sort of public or some sort of something we attach to the water flyers. Hey guys, if remember before you dig, call whatever the number is. If you want to do something in Coppell, please contact your planning department. Only because we're getting ready to hear another one. Same kinds of things generally, but yeah. So anyway, all right. Is there a motion by the commission on item 7 of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will move that PD-161 R3-SF-12 be approved and that the fence be allowed to stand until city staff works out a relocation that is acceptable to the neighbors who can see the fence and the homeowners and the neighbors who have the fence on their lot. And if they cannot arrive at an agreement as to the location with city staff, then leave the fence where it is.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I second.
I'm sorry?
I second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Bishop. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Maurer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you to all who provided input to this. I do see it as a health, safety concern. I really hope there's a solution here that benefits both, and it doesn't default to the final comment there about leaving as is, because I think a workable solution can be achieved here, since we got to make adjustments anyway. But best of luck on all that, and yeah, scary stuff. I learned a little bit about wild hogs tonight too, so thank you again. All right, we got the headliner case here in a second, and I had promised staff that we'd take a quick break before we got into it. So quick break, and then we'll get into it. It's 8:06, and we'll adjourn for just a few minutes for a quick break. All righty, the time is 8:13, and our next case before us is item 8 on the agenda. This is a public hearing. This is to consider approval of PD-144R-TH-2 Sherwood Park Carport, a zoning change request from Plan Development number 144 Townhouse 2 to Plan Development 144 Revised Townhouse 2, to revise the plan development to modify carport requirements for the subdivision on approximately 40 acres of land located at the southwest corner of Parkway Boulevard and Moore Road, at the request of James and Sarah Goyne, being represented by Greg Goyne. We'll have a staff presentation first by Ms. Mary Perone Boswell, and then does the applicant Goyne, is there a presentation? Will there be a presentation? Oh, that's right. He's going to be in virtual. Okay, that's right. Okay, very good. All right, Mary, turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good evening again, Chairman, Commissioners. Item 8 on our agenda is a public hearing for Sherwood Park Carports. So Sherwood Park is located on the south side of Parkway Boulevard between Lodge and Moore and down to Grace Lane. So why are we here? So a carport permit was applied for by a resident at a nearby subdivision and was denied for not meeting the carport requirements. This resident then submitted addresses of existing carports, sheds, etc., to staff that they believed did not meet requirements either, which included approximately 30 carports in the Sherwood Park subdivision. The Sherwood Park subdivision was platted in the mid-1980s. Phase 1 fronted Parkway Boulevard. Phase 2 was south of that and terminated with Grace Lane. The duplexes constructed have only a one-car garage per residence. Many of the existing carports were constructed 20-plus years ago, and the homes have changed hands multiple times since then. So there's about 264 residential lots there. The current parking requirement for single-family residence is a two-car garage. These homes are rear entry product, meaning garages are located at the rear of the house with access from an alley. The current ordinance requirements for this subdivision is a 20-foot rear yard setback for any off-street parking area or structure. So there's about 30 carports in this subdivision. All but 2 are interior to the subdivision. The other 2 are visible from Moore Road. So this subdivision became a PD in 1995. Oops. Okay. So what happened was that staff was notified. We did go and check to see if there were any, permits pulled for the carports that did exist. I believe there was about 1. So code enforcement did start sending out letters to the residents. Once these letters were received, we did meet. We definitely had some homeowners who were questioning why this was, what was going on. They did come and meet with staff, and subsequently we had a meeting with them, and their question was, how do we move forward in terms of trying to have the carports that are there become legal, to keep the carports, because they do have one-car garages. In the neighborhood, there's a lot of elderly people, and they want to maintain the benefits of a carport, weather protection, handicap accessibility, keeping cars off the front streets and have them park in the rear. So basically, this is where we're at today. So they've come forward. They had a petition which You have a list of all the people who signed the petition, 134 property owners who came forward to want to amend the PD regulations for carports in this subdivision. One of the things that we did look at is that analysis of the Woodridge neighborhood, which is similar in nature. It's also zoned townhouse zoning, built around the same time. That one's a zero property line type construction, but they didn't have any garages associated with them. So they came forward with an ordinance back in the 90s to amend the carport setback requirements, and council approved an amendment which allowed for a 3-foot setback for that subdivision. And even with that, there's some in that subdivision that have came back for a 0-foot setback. So the applicants from Sherwood Park are requesting an amendment to the PD conditions that would allow for reduced setback requirements for existing and any proposed carports. This is the first step in the process. So if the zoning was approved, they would have to apply for a permit and have a structural engineer evaluate the compliance of the existing carport structure with the currently adopted residential and building codes. So here are just some examples of the existing carports that you see. So some of them are just cover one of the duplex units, and we do have others that cover the full extent of the residential structure, so both units. So here's an example of a double carport. So in this instance, you see on the left where they have 2 carports with, looks like they were constructed potentially at different times because they have 2 different sets of poles. You also have the one in the bottom right, which looks like it was constructed all at one time because there's one support structure in the middle. So just looking at some of the side yard setbacks, they do meet those requirements. I think there's a minimum of about 15 feet going up to about 22 feet on the side yard, so that doesn't seem to be an issue with the carports. So we did send out notices, 314 within 200 feet. We did receive 17 responses, letters back in favor, 1 opposed. We did send out a courtesy notices within 800 feet. We received a call back with 1 in favor, 3 others with no comment. I also handed out to you basically a spreadsheet that showed all of the people that did respond. A lot of the people that saw the signs out front on Parkway called just to see what it was about. I think a lot of them were just trying to find out, was it being rezoned to something different, like multifamily or something. The majority of people that I spoke with, once they heard it was about the carports, really had no other questions. There's also 134 of the residents of Sherwood Park subdivision did sign a petition in favor, and you have that list as well. So with regard to this PD amendment, staff is recommending approval of the PD amendment with the following conditions. 1, that carports shall only be allowed in the rear of the property and accessed by an alley. 2, that carports must be open on a minimum of 3 sides, which complies with the definition that we have. If one continuous carport is proposed across 2 properties, then an agreement will be required to be signed and filed at the county speaking to the maintenance responsibilities of the carport. This agreement would run with the property, so it would not depend on who owned the property, but it would stay with the land itself. If the carport, number 4, if the carport is located entirely on one property, the supporting column shall be located on the subject property only. 5, the surface under the carport shall be paved with concrete. 6, that a minimum 10-foot side yard setback shall be required for the carport support structures, except at the shared common property line of the residential structure. The roof overhang cannot extend over the property line. Number 7, materials for the carport structure would include wood and metal. Any exposed wood would need to be wood that is naturally durable, meaning insect and rot resistant. Metal includes steel poles. Number 8, posts may be wrapped with stone or brick if desired. Number 9, roof materials can include standing seam metal roofs or similar that is rust resistant. Composite shingles or other acceptable roofing material, for example, clay tile. 10, solar panels on the carports may be allowed if they meet all solar permit criteria, and a separate permit and inspection for the solar panels will be required. This is something that is already in effect that we have requirements for. Number 11, if the zoning is approved, the existing carports would need to apply for a permit and have a structural engineer evaluate the compliance of the structure with the currently adopted residential and building codes. And number 12, that the carport structure shall not extend past the rear property line. Let's see. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and I believe we have people in the audience that are here to speak on the item as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mary. Quick question there. Item 10, solar panels on the carports are allowed if they meet solar panel permit criteria. Generally, what does that deal with, the criteria for solar panels?
So, yeah, because it has to deal with the weight of the solar panels. So they have to make sure that the structure is compatible or can sustain that type of weight on it.
Okay. And just to make sure that I got this correct, so initially there was Coppell did not have an ordinance regarding carports, or carports were not allowed until an ordinance came into effect that allowed for carports.
So we have a carport ordinance, and this has a requirement for a 20-foot setback. The carports that were constructed do not have a permit. There was, I believe, one that had a permit prior to I think somewhere in the early 90s. There was probably a different requirement for accessory structures. But the carports that exist currently do not have a permit.
Okay.
And do not and cannot meet that 20-foot setback requirement.
When was the carport ordinance adopted?
I don't have a date for the carport ordinance, but I can tell you that the ordinance that was approved, I believe in 95 when it became a PD, did list requirements for the setbacks.
Okay.
And for some reason or another, 30 carports have been constructed and do not meet that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mary. Any questions of staff by the commission? Jim?
I take it that likewise, any carports that were non-compliant at the time the carport ordinance was passed back in the 90s were also not addressed. The ordinance was passed. It rendered non-compliant structures in place, but that wasn't taken into account.
I guess I'm not understanding the question. Sorry.
Because it was poorly asked. So when the ordinance was passed that had for the first time had a carport requirement that had the 20-foot setback back in the 90s, you had made the point that there were some carports constructed since then that are non-compliant. But I take it that it's also true that there were already carports constructed in place that were in place prior to the passage of the ordinance that were also non-compliant.
I cannot tell you when those carports were constructed.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. And we don't know how many of them we're talking about. Of the 30 that
Right.
are here, we don't know how many were constructed prior to the ordinance being passed. And some of the people, if not maybe most or all of the people that currently reside in those 30 homes, may not have owned it for that entire period of time, such that they wouldn't even know when the carport was constructed.
Right, so, like, obviously, some of those houses have, changed ownership. People purchased these houses with the carport there, and now we're telling them, hey, your carport never had a permit, it needs to come down, was essentially what we've been telling them.
Because of the 20-foot setback requirement?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, that they needed to come in and get a permit. But essentially, the way those lots and the houses are configured, they couldn't get a permit.
Right.
Because they don't have the lot depth or to have that 20-foot setback.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions of staff before we get to the applicant presentation? Okay, so I believe we have Greg Goyne in virtually to represent the applicants, James and Sarah Goyne. Greg, you have the floor there.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
First of all, thank you, Chairman Haas. Thank you to the commission, and thank you for the staff for working with us on this. I did have a presentation that's already been submitted. I won't go through that because Mary actually included some of the slides in her presentation. But I would just like to recap, and then, by the way, in case you need it for the record, my address is 928 Creek Crossing. I've lived in Coppell since 2000. I'm representing my parents who live in Sherwood Park. I do not, but their address is 553 Stringfellow. So about a year ago, we got this notice that the carports basically were out of compliance and needed to come down. And to the point that was raised earlier, this was quite a surprise because they bought the house in 2005. And in fact, they have a plat of their house that's dated in 2000 that it shows the carport on it. So we don't know when the carport was built, but we know it was prior to 2000. And when we checked with realtors, in fact, the realtor that sold them the house, and she's been operating in Coppell her entire career, she was unaware that the carports were not allowed in Coppell and needed permits. So it's one of those things, it's kind of a mystery. They were plainly visible, even with inspectors coming and going and inspecting other things like roofs and water heaters and building additions and things like that. But in all that time, they were never cited or never informed that the carports were out of compliance. So of course, they and others like them are interested in keeping the carports, and they have a lot of support for this in the neighborhood, both with carport owners as well as people that don't have carports but would like to have them because they feel like it would improve their home's value. So we've been working with the city, as you know, to define some kind of uniform regulations so that carports could be allowed in Sherwood Park, but they would be sturdy and consistent because today they're not all consistent. And of course, we wouldn't want them to be an eyesore either. So the things that Mary listed here, the 12 items we've agreed to and would be willing to, go back and get, if this is agreed upon, we would go back and get permits, get the inspection done to make them allowable. So those main things I wanted to share. Any questions?
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant by the commission? Okay, we'll reserve the right to come back to ask you some questions.
I do have a question.
Sorry, Ed?
So, did you mention that you received a letter about a year ago of non-compliance, and was that from the city, or did I mishear?
Yes, that was from the city. I think it was last August.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Okay, very good. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to the public hearing. We have several folks that have signed up. Remember, we got 3 minutes per speaker. I see some folks have yielded time to a Deborah Panic. Is Deborah Panic here? Okay, so you're the, okay. So I'm going to let you go first because it looks like Sarah Goin and Jim Goin have deferred time to you, and same with John Wong, maybe some others. But I still will call the other names if there's anything you would like to add or say, you concur, whatever. We want to make sure we get that. So let's start with Miss Panic.
Hi.
And your name and address for
My
the record.
name is Deborah Panic, and I live at 561 Stringfellow Drive. So I actually am neighbors to a lot of the people that just asked me to speak on their behalf. So point of interest, I bought my house in 1996. The Goins' house down the street literally had their carport up because I saw it back then. So even back then, I kept thinking, oh, we can have carports because I saw it then. So, I was surprised at how many houses have it, but I hear people always talking about it because we only have single-car garages, and it becomes hard. And I think the most interesting piece I wanted to point out kind of came to my attention in the last couple of weeks. I participated in listening to one of the city's presentations on the senior village concept that the city is looking at. And I think everyone needs to realize that when these houses were, even when I first moved into it, a lot of people there had small kids, had lots of trick-or-treaters coming around. Today, we have hardly any coming around because most of the people are staying. And so you have a lot of seniors in that area. And so a carport also would help people be parking their cars because now people have more than one car, more than 2 cars per household. And so they'd be at least parking it in the backyard. Protecting their cars from the elements becomes an important reason to support these. And like I said, they're on the alleyway, so they're not really an eyesore to anyone. I didn't even realize there were as many as there were. I just knew of the 3 in close proximity to me. They've always been well maintained. Nothing's cluttered underneath them. Cars or trucks are what's underneath them. So I personally am 100% in favor of it. And I'll be honest, I'm one of those that really would like to get one too. So do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let me start back at the top here. Sarah Goin, would you like to add anything to this public hearing? You said no. Okay. Jim Goin? No. Okay. John Wong?
He's not here. He had to leave. He's hard of hearing.
Okay. We talk that much, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. So let's see. How about Nancy Metcalf? Metcast?
I don't know if any of you have been out there to see.
Ma'am, yes, come to the front here, please. You can't get away from that. Yeah.
Nancy Metcalf. I live at 240 Nixon Street, and I bought my duplex in 2005. The carport was already there. I love my carport. That's one of the main reasons why I bought that unit. And if I was not allowed to have the carport and had to pull my SUV, I don't even think I could get it into the garage. And if I could, I couldn't even open the doors. They're that narrow. And then we have our washer and dryer and hot water heaters out there. So it's not like it's an empty space. I mean, those take up the front part of the units. So I am in favor of keeping them. It's very valuable to me. With all the snow and ice we had year before last, it was so nice. My car was protected. I didn't have to worry about slipping on the ice to get into my vehicle. So I'm very much in favor of it.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
I think you have one question.
Miss Metcast? We have a curious one here.
Yeah, just
Commissioner Guerra.
One question. I guess in speaking to your neighbors too, the possibility of the engineer going out and assessing your carport, and all of a sudden it's not didn't meet standard or code. So, speaking to your neighbors and yourself, is there any concern with that?
Well, I would do whatever it takes to keep it. So if there was something I needed to modify or change, I would do that. It's worth that to me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Brian, maybe that's Robinson, Rosias?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Brian Roscovius. I own 2 properties there. I'm one of them. One of the ones that was actually in the picture there, the one that's joining across both. So first, I want to just say thank you for all y'all for being here and listening. So like most people said, we're all pretty much in an agreement that, we want it to be of a good, suitable material. No one, first of all, wants to have this car structure support that then is going to be an issue for yourself, which you're trying to protect anyways, your car. So we're all in agreement that, one, it should look good and be of a suitable material, which I know we talked about, the metal, the wood, treated wood, whatnot, with the insects and rot. With that also, my one side is a rental, and my rental people have expressed too, part of the reason of actually getting this place was because of the rental. They're used to, as most people know in Coppell, this is pretty much the smallest places you can get in Coppell. And people that don't want to be in an apartment, it's pretty much the smallest thing they can be in without being in an apartment and being in a home, having a backyard or whatnot. And then with that carport, they gain that extra storage when, like the lady said, you do only have very limited space in there. My 4Runner can barely open the doors in there, and we do have the water heater and whatnot. Luckily, I do not have my washer and dryer in there, so that's another thing. On the same token, I know it's more hearsay, but my dad actually did get the carport put in there in 2007. He did ask the city when he put it in, and at the time the person told him, if you put it on the weekend, it's constructed throughout the weekend, it won't be a problem. So my dad actually did ask the city, to be honest, and that's what he was told. Otherwise, he would have gotten a permit, as he does for all his sprinkler systems and everything else throughout the city. I know it was earlier mentioned, too, that I think is a good idea that maybe in the water bill and general permits putting out, that probably is a good notice, because I think most people in the city don't know you have to get a permit for everything. My last thing would be, I think in general, when you buy a house, how do you know what's in code and whatnot? My dad bought this place. Someone else bought it from him. I bought it from him. It's been inspected. How do I know it's not in code and that what in the future I'm going to then have to tear down? Or how do I know in general when I buy a house what's in place to know what's code, what's going to be a violation that I'm going to have to deal with 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, as most of these carports have been in for quite a while. So that's my main thing. But two, obviously we all do want them to look good, be of a good suitable material. Safety is a concern. My neighbor is a 90-year-old lady, and she doesn't know what she'd do without that carport, just for safety concerns of getting in the garage and not being able to put her car in the garage and open the door. And then obviously if we have to pay a permit, that's something obviously it sounds like we're supposed to get a permit, so I think that's not keeping anybody, and if we have to get a permit, that's the least of everyone's concern. So, but I thank you all for your time, and any questions, please.
You mentioned 2007 was when your dad got the permit?
Yes, and I actually...
Or I'm sorry, it had the carport installed.
That's what, yes. I have the paperwork with me, yes, that's when
on
it
the
got
weekend.
installed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, sir.
In the real estate world, the contracts have somewhere buried in there, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware that they're in knowledge of all building codes and it meets, and so there's some things there. But okay, thank you very much.
Sir. Thank you.
Marge Wick, and then that'll be followed by Charles Wick. Oh, I am sorry. We'll yield extra time to you, ma'am.
I would just like to say that
Ma'am,
if you check the
name and address for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Marge Wick. I live at 523 Lee Drive, and we have a rental property at 516 Grace. And our tenants are very thrilled because one owns a truck, one owns a car, and they can't get both of them into a safe area. So with the snow and the rain and the sleet, these carports have held up. Ours has been in since 2007. And I have to really say, with my husband in a wheelchair, I cannot park my car in the garage and get him into the wheelchair and into the house. So the carport is a blessing because I can pull in and I can leave space enough to open the door, get him in the wheelchair, and wheel him through the garage into the house. That's number one. Number two, we don't have that much storage in these duplexes. So the garages do have, we put shelves in to put storage. Number three, if you drive down our street, day or night, the number of cars that are parked on our street in opposite directions and across from each other, it prevents a fire truck from coming down without having to avoid hitting these cars. Where with the carports, most people, and I've noticed around the neighborhood, and I've taken pictures and I've given things to the council, that they are preferring to park in the back off the alleys. And if they have the carport, they don't have to worry about the storms. And that gets more cars off the street because we have the alleys. And I believe most of them that I have checked out and I've driven around and taken pictures are within the property line. I think there might just be one or two that are extended, but they could be reduced if they had to be. But my biggest thing of it is, I guess, nobody knew we had to have a permit, I guess, at the time, because when ours was put in, nothing was said about a permit. And the same with our tenant. And my son lives down the street and he put his in. Didn't know that we had to have a permit. But now we know, whatever the procedure is, that we have to get permission to keep these carports would be wonderful. There is one on our block that has wood, and he has the plastic covers. And those covers are blowing off every time you turn around. A couple of them have been into my neighbor's yard where they've blown off. There's termites in that wood. So I have a little disagreement about having wood carports. And the metal ones have held up. There's no marks. They're not bruised. They've been through all these storms, and they're in best condition of any carports that I've seen around in other parts of the town that are made of wood. So I'm just requesting for my husband's safety and mine, who has to be the caregiver, that think about these elderly people that do need these carports, because you can't get your person on a wheelchair through the front door, because if you park out front, you've got to go up the sidewalk into those little step, and it's difficult. And we've been dealing this for 4 years with him in a wheelchair, and eventually we're hoping he'll walk someday. We'll see what happens, but just for safety, get the cars off the street, because that's an important feature in our neighborhood, I think, which is one of them. So I appreciate everybody's help, and if you can come up with something that would help us to keep these metal carports, drive through and see what the good conditions that they're in through all these storms that we've had with the wind and the hail and the sleet and the snow. They're all in really good shape. So just something to think about, and if we can be approved to keep them, hopefully we could be grandfathered, because many of them have been in there for a number of years, and maybe we could be grandfathered if there's a way. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
And I presume that Mr. Wick would have the same opinion as you outlined. I see him waving. Is that a yes? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much.
My apologies on that. Okay. I remember President Biden got into something like that, where stand up. Oh, God love you. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Joanne Saved? Oh, okay. We have some. Okay. Thank you. Joanne?
No, I just agree with everything.
You're agreeing with everything it's saying, yielding time to Jean Rest. Okay. Alberto? Same? All right. And I presume you are for retention of the carports? Absolutely. Okay. And then Jean Reskovlis? Your name is written on Joanne's and Alberto's thing, so let's hear it.
Okay. Excuse me. Yes, my name is Jean Roscovius. I own a property at 483 Parkway. I do not live there now. I do rent it out. I did initially buy it for some time. When I retire, I may move there. So two purposes for buying it. I want to give I am a landlord, obviously. I want to give that perspective because I am a landlord that believes in the quality of housing for tenants. And I do know, and I don't have the carports right now. I try to improve my properties as time goes by, and I've improved it, as money permits. And that is one thing I would like to do because I do know that they do use the storage in the garage a lot. And I've had conversations with, I've had, I think, 4 tenants there, and they have really appreciated that. And so I do believe the issue on the whole thing is the quality of life, and so they have space, and eventually for recovering if and when I can afford it. So I just want to give the investor's point of view, because I think that's important also. Obviously, a lot of people live there, in their own residence, but it also is a home to many, many tenants, and so, and they have the rental ones. That's it. Any questions?
And when did you say that you purchased them?
I purchased that one in 2012.
And the carport was already there? Or you
No, I don't have a carport.
Okay.
It's something I'd like to do.
Gotcha.
I try
Sorry.
to
Gotcha.
improve the property as time goes on,
Gotcha.
and so, a little bit at a time is allowed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Lin Nguyen Farnez? Liuhuen, maybe? Okay. It doesn't say for or against, so don't know there. How about Sean McClellan? Okay.
Sean McClellan. I live at 507 Lee Drive. I'm for the carports. I agree with the sentiment that our streets are crowded. We had a freight delivery recently, and Lee Drive has that awkward turn where it's a tight space, and our freight driver couldn't get back out of the road because there were cars parked on either side. So we had to back him out with me on one side of the street, my wife on the other side of the street, helping him back his way through so he could get back on and turn around. It was awful. And I would love to see more people parking in the back if possible, and more the better. The other thing that I had in mind is the idea that it should come up to the fence line. I value the idea of having a permit to where it's consistent, structurally whole, sound, and visibly not falling apart. I have value in that, and I would love to see something passed to where those permits can be received and there can be an inspection passed before these go into place.
Mr. McClellan, do you have a carport currently on your?
I do not.
Okay.
We've considered it, but not in the cards for right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have anyone else that have signed up at the beginning of the meeting, but yes, we're going to now open it up to others who'd like to speak, and we'll start with you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sandra Johnson, and I reside at 559 Kirkland Drive. And I bought my house in 88. So I've been here for about 32 years. I put my garage, put the carport in 95. I think it was 95 or 96. And it's been there, and it looks like one of the ones that you put up there. It's metal, it's in cement, and it looks very nice. And so I think in 2000, someone from the city, maybe it was 1999, someone from the city did come by and tell me that, why did I have the carport? And I'm not sure who it was, but I said, well, I saw someone else, and they had it, and I didn't know that I needed a permit. Sorry. So she told me that this one guy was grandfathered in. And I said, well, grandfather me in. And she looked around and she looked at it and she said it was okay and she would grandfather me in. And I haven't had anybody else to come by or say anything that would tell me that it was, I didn't have a permit or was out of code or anything like that. I agree with everybody who came up and said the purpose and having the carports, and they are good. And mine is not wood, it's metal, and I've had it there for 20-some years, and it's still standing, rain, shine, sleet, or snow, and it's still there. So I am in favor of it, and I hope, the ones that want it can get it, and that it looks nice. And that's about it.
So a question or two for you.
Uh-huh.
So it's been there for 20 years plus. I'm certain it's structurally sound.
It's still sound.
What
It's still
if-
standing. It's still pretty.
Depending on the outcome of the whole process here going forward, if there's an engineering review, engineer determines it's not, how will that make you feel?
Well, I would at least have to understand the requirements and how it does not meet the code. I will abide by whatever, but I'm sure it's not, I don't know that it's that much out of code. But if it is, I will comply with that.
Okay.
I like Coppell. I've been there, like I said, for 32 years, and 32 more years, I guess.
Sure, we all will be.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And question for you there, so a city official came by and said, you will be grandfathered.
She said that she would grandfather me in.
She said, okay, so.
Yeah, and I don't know, I can't tell you who that was.
As I look down to the staff over to the left.
I don't know.
Okay.
But she did. She was very nice, and so she was going up and down, checking everything in the alleyway to make sure that everything was in code in the alley. And that's when I saw her, and she mentioned that to me, and I said, well, can you grandfather me in? And she said, sure. I said, okay.
Simple request, simple answer, it's done.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'm not sure who that was. But I was in high school. I can't tell you.
I like the deflection there by the city attorney. That was really quick. And, wow, okay. We in pre-session, we did have some discussion regarding grandfathering versus the application as it stands, and so we'll probably have some comments and questions on that. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on the application, for or against? You came all the way out here to sit and listen. Ah, yeah, good, we got another one. We don't bite, we promise.
My name is Julia, and my English is not good, so if you cannot understand me, so please stop me at any time.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know we have a meeting tonight until 6:30, until my friend, she called me. So I was shopping Kroger, and she told me there's a meeting in City of Hall and discussing about the carport. I said, okay, this is very important for me because I have a carport, Yeah, I'm resident of the property 527 Kirkland Drive. I bought this house in 2017 because of carport and the solar panels installed on the carport. So actually, because the house, the price increased. Yeah, the value increased. So after moving, I really like it because, like the other people said, I can have more space in the garage. I can use that as a storage room. And the first year after moving, there's another, here's a story. After receiving my property tax bill, I just think, oh, well, really it's a bit high. So I was trying to argue with it. I went to the Dallas, I forgot the name,
Appraisal district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true or not because the person, he showed me, actually the property around of my house, the price is a little bit lower than mine. So I think, ask why, and his property, you have the carport and some solar, panels. So I think then if that's true, the carport and the solar panels make the house, the price increase. So I pay more property tax. So I think that's a win-win situation for all of us.
You might not have friends here after this, but
Yeah, so I like this carport. I think all of people, we favorable about this. They also make the street look clean. We don't need to park outside. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks.
That wasn't that bad. Anybody else? I see gentleman in blue up there. No? No desire? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All righty. So if there's nobody else, I'll close the public hearing. Okay. Well, now the public hearing is now closed. And then, is there any questions based on the testimony we've heard of staff by the commission or of the applicant? Ready?
Oh, I just wanted to say one thing. It's been an enjoyable public meeting.
I guess it depends on the outcome, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Are you, okay. Jim.
Okay. Well, so the problem I have is with condition 11. We've got 264 lots, 134 homes approved, and only 30 units are at issue with the current standing carports, according to the staff presentation. But to the extent that those 30 units that have existing carports have been paying an enhanced property tax by virtue of that, or they're seniors on fixed income, I don't think they should have to have a permit application, a structural engineer evaluation, and have anything to do to bring the carport up to current code if we pass this. I think they should be grandfathered in. I do think we could try to address that when they sell the home. The buyer could come in and negotiate with the seller to decide if there were changes to the carport that needed to be done to bring it into compliance with the new code. Then we could address it then at a time when people are at an arm's length buy and sell situation, and it can be resolved fairly between them according to their negotiations at arm's length. I think the materials requirements, all like that, are fine. I'm totally fine with staff recommendations and conditions on any new carports. If someone decided, like this young gentleman decided he and his wife wanted a carport, then I think they should go ahead and file for a permit, and it should be constructed in a way that's commensurate with the material requirements and the structural requirements. But I just don't think it's right after all this time. Some people have constructed carports 15, 20 years ago and still live there. Some people bought it with a carport. They have no idea when it was constructed. Some people have been told, apparently, that it was hunky-dory. And I just think that we should grandfather in any existing carports, impose the new requirements at the time of the sale of the home, and particularly with respect to the senior citizens that are living there. The structural engineer is going to cost money. Bringing it into compliance with any of the new code requirements or materials requirements is going to cost money. The bottom line is if they can't afford that, they're going to have to demolish the carport. Because if they can't comply with condition 11, the only remedy is to demolish the carport. And I just don't think that's a fair outcome. So I think I'm with you, Mr. Wick, I really do. I would recommend that we modify the conditions so that 11 would only apply to newly constructed carports, and we grandfather in the 30 units that are there.
Thank you. So, I get,
Mr. Chairman, I do have a concern as city attorney that we've heard about everyone that's here tonight, their carports are okay, but not all of them are okay.
Right.
Some of them are in dilapidated condition.
Right.
And so we need to, that's unfair to them, it's unfair to the neighbors that they have to continue to put up with it dilapidated. So that's the sweet spot, if you want to talk about that. And if you have a solution, great. I don't. So,
well, I too share that concern because it puts liability on the city. You know, we're allowing something that doesn't meet a certain level of standard that becomes a potential issue if an accident happens, it falls down, et cetera. In terms of...
I understand the use. I understand you want to allow the carports. That's the use that gets grandfathered. I'm concerned about the structures themselves, and so that's why that condition's there.
I understand that one.
I'll be quiet, sorry.
No.
I do have a question, thank you, City Attorney, for piping up, regarding the term grandfathering versus the approach that's been developed here. Is there any liability with the grandfather approach versus the PD, addressing it via PD approval?
Well, I don't want to get into there's two standards, and that's part of the issue.
Okay.
Now the new guy has to build the Taj Mahal, and someone that violated the permitting requirement gets rewarded for their bad behavior. And I don't mean that in an ugly way, but we want people to come, and we want people to build what they're entitled to build. We just want to make sure it's not going to fall down and hurt their neighbor or hurt someone else.
Okay.
So I would rather us take this approach, because I've worked with staff on this. If there's a way we can sweet spot condition 11, please, we can try, so.
Okay. I guess I have to confess I'm a little disappointed in perhaps some past city approvals or non-approvals or working on weekends or whatever, the level of due diligence that may not have occurred in the past, so that's a little disappointing to hear, but I'm glad that, you know, all new staff is fully up to speed on the carport requirements and of the ordinance, et cetera. So, I too am concerned about the cost. With some of these structures that have been here for some time, 20 years, and let's just say this thing went south and it was not approved, and whatever process there would be in terms of time to remove carports, it shouldn't be 30 days or 60 days for folks that have had these things for 15 plus years. It ought to be years before it's, you know, removed from that perspective. So, and not, you know, some turnaround within X number of days. That's if only this thing went south and it wasn't approved. But I agree, I do have a concern with the health safety aspect, making sure that there is a standard that's being met so that that liability cannot be brought back on the city, because that would not be good to be writing blank checks. So, you know, at the outset, when I drove when I drove the neighborhood, I guess I didn't see the car issue. Cars on both sides of the street couldn't move through. I moved through just fine. I think it was a Saturday morning I went through. And I drove the streets first. You know, I wanted to understand the neighborhood first before I took a look at the carports. And as I drove the alleys, you know, I took pictures and I saw the different carports and the condition of some of the carports and the solar panels. Clever. But I thought about this and I thought, you know, given the size of the structures, the one-car garage, this doesn't really look that bad. It looks like it could work. So I did change my position because at first I was like, but seeing it and understanding the value that it brings to the residents that have had it for some time, now it's the matter of finding a solution that works the best going forward without setting some precedent that, oh, well, if this neighborhood got it, then other neighborhood with at least 50%, they want to do something unique, then they come forward. But we are safeguarded in the sense that this is a planned development. We take considerations unique to each individual case to address the concerns at hand. So quite honestly, I'm in agreement with the conditions as presented. I just still have some general concern, but I think to be determined still here. So, Freddie and Glenn. I'm going to go with Freddie since he's
Glenn.
enjoying the night.
Well, it's been enjoyable. So for, I guess, for number 11, we're talking about this sweet spot, but, depending on the structural engineer that they hire, they're all going to have a different standard. I don't know if we could consider a minimal standard, because again, I think, the depth of the post, how it's embedded, things like that, I think there should be a minimal standard at least established for that because, again, it's professional engineer, it's their recommendations, but I think to hit that sweet spot, maybe have a minimal standard that we're looking at.
That's the residential building code. Okay, I will try and address this. I'm going to move that PD 144R-TH2 Sherwood Park Carports be approved as submitted, subject to the staff conditions, adding that nothing in the statute or approval of the Sherwood Park Carport shall affect any HOA regulation or deed restriction. So this will not apply to anything that is a member of an HOA. 2, the roof of a carport above the roof line would not be approved. It must be level to the first story line. And 3rd, no storage would be visible in the carport to the public areas of the street or the side yards. Or the alley. Yeah, that's part of the public, I would think.
For
You could say
vehicles.
alley, that's fine.
Okay. But the whole idea is you want them to use it for motor vehicles. Oh. And I
Garbage
assume that
cans.
most people keep their garbage cans back there. I always have when I live in Coppell, they're on the back. So.
And number 11 be amended to state, apply for a permit and have a structural engineer or general contractor evaluate the compliance of the structure with the currently adopted residential building codes. So if somebody doesn't want to hire an expensive engineer but use a local general contractor, their opinion as to the structural soundness of the carport should be sufficient. And that will probably save as much as we can save citizens on the review of the structure of the carport.
Is that general contractor a licensed general contractor?
They all are, I think, yes.
Okay.
Licensed general contractor.
Okay.
I would take exception to that. A general contractor is not the same as a structural engineer, but yet their pricing is probably very similar. Speaking as an engineer.
Okay.
I think there's certain things that that they need to look for that is specific to the building code for a carport that a general contractor probably is not aware of. So, my 2 cents.
Freddie, you had a comment in work session about lighting under a carport, if there's anything electrified. You want to elaborate on that?
I think that was the only concern I had, was just really, the number of lights, or just how bright it would be underneath there, just some concerns regarding that, so.
So it's used to illuminate the carport area, not an additional outside
Correct.
side yard for festivities with LEDs and all that?
Yes.
Just basic lighting?
Yes.
Okay, so it has to have
I
downward
don't know, Glenn, you were
underneath the
you had a
canopy.
motion here. There's been some other ideas, but let's keep going here before we, Ed, do you have some comments?
A question for Mary. As it relates to the materials for the carport structure, what are the city's thoughts regarding one, connecting it to the roof line, and connecting the same materials that are on the roof to the carport versus wood and standing seam or metal?
So with the state, a couple years ago, if you're familiar with, it's part of the main structure.
Yeah, if it's connected to the house, it's part of the main structure, and now I can't regulate building materials.
And we can't regulate
any
building
longer
materials.
Under 3,000 of the government code. So if it's an accessory structure, I think we've got a little more leeway. So if it's attached to the house versus unattached to the house, I think that I would prefer that it not be attached to the house, just from regulatory for
Sure.
materials purposes. Probably structurally, it's probably better if it is attached to the house because it becomes more stable.
Right.
So
Are they normally attached to the house? The ones out there attached to the house? Do you know?
I don't.
They vary all over the lot.
It's hard to
Some of it
tell,
Yeah.
really.
looks like it might, and then the one on the right, for example, looks like it's not attached to the house. It's off
Most that we saw were not
the
attached.
of the main structure.
Is that you, Greg?
Yeah, most that we saw were not attached.
Most you saw were not attached.
This one's underneath, so it's not.
So it's probably a variety.
Okay. Did you get your question? Jim?
Could we grandfather in any carports that are made entirely of metal or steel?
Yeah, it could still be structurally unsound.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Bob.
I think inspecting them was kind of the middle ground of allowing them to stay, but making sure that they're safe. And that was, and that's why we went there.
Generally, just so that commission understands in the audience, we generally, when someone does work and they do it without a permit, if it's the support system for a building, then we have to get an engineer to come in and tell us that it's structurally sound. Otherwise, I got to make them tear it down and put it back up. And that's what we've done. It's like when an electrician comes, if you cover up the electrician and the electrician hasn't done the inspection, you got to tear a hole in the wall. You got to tear a hole in the wall. It's the price you get for not getting a permit, despite whatever someone told them to build it on the weekend.
Okay.
Just, Mary, one follow-up question. In terms of the intention with the staff recommendations, if a structural engineer comes out and deems that it's structurally sound, would they have to make any modifications to the structure in terms of anything? Okay.
The idea being, I don't think we were necessarily opposed to having the metal there, especially because they are in the rear of the houses, and unless you shouldn't really be driving down that alley unless you live there or you're the garbage truck driver. So it's not like it's in the front. It's in the front of the house. So I'm not sure that we're necessarily opposed to the metal. Our concern was more is that it be structurally sound.
Jim, did you have a follow-up question?
No, sir, thank you.
You good? Any other comments or closing comments or any discussion? We have somewhat of a motion on the floor that was never seconded. So we have to address that motion. Would you like to amend your motion on anything?
Yes, I'll remove the language of general contractor from the change in number 11.
Okay.
Thank you.
How about there was a general comment about lighting underneath those.
I don't think I'm worried about it.
Okay. So we have a modified motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second on that motion?
Could you potentially run through the motion?
Okay.
Just one more time.
I move that PD 144R-TH2 Sherwood Park Concepts be approved as submitted, subject to staff conditions, without any changes in item 11. Adding to it that the PD shall have no effect on any HOA, recorded deed restrictions, or bylaws, and that the addition of a roof to the carport above the roof line shall be prohibited, and that no storage shall be visible on the carport from any public area.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a second by Commissioner Guerra. Any final comments or thoughts? Okay. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for the input and testimony. As you know, this will get forwarded to the council. It'll be a simple majority versus if this thing went south here at the P&Z, a super majority. So thank you very much for your input tonight, and best of luck with the item going forward. Okay, that was item 8 on the agenda. We had already addressed item 9. Which was the continuation, the sign ordinance that we went ahead and closed the public hearing and killed the item. Item 10 on the agenda is update on council actions. Mary?
Don't believe we have anything. Let's see. Ninth grade center was approved at city council. Yeah, and in the Ubique house on Pecan Hollow for the young lady who had her accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the PD amendment for the setbacks for the garage,
Okay.
and that was it.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for our due diligence here as a commission. Thank you again to the public for the input. And as we move forward here, item 11 on the agenda is adjournment. The time is 9:22, and I will now adjourn the meeting.
Great work, Mary.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for all your help.